Sorry, that was a promotion. CFO Rook, CAO DeJohn, and Municipal Coordinator Duarte. It is 6 o'clock sharp on November 16th, again in Chambers. I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'm proposing to immediately go into the closed council meeting to propose topics for discussion in the absence of public or land and enforcement matters. I won't read them all, but that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the committee charter. Section 91, D, E, F, G, I, K, and N. I'll put forward that. Can I have confirmation from the councillors? I'll put forward the motion that we go into close for those reasons. Can I have a second, please? Good. Call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Carried. We are, Carla, we'll close to the public. All right, it is November 16th at 7 p.m. I am in council chambers at 400 Center Road, along with CAO DeJohn, CFO Rook, Municipal Coordinator Larch, and we have all camera on Zoom, and the gallery is live with us today. Council has just come back from a closed session. It has paused the closed session, and we will go back to close at the end of the public meeting. However, in the interest of the public, I have a reporting out piece, and the reporting out is as follows. During the closed portion, during the in-camera portion of the meeting that preceded the public, council provided preliminary concept feedback on a potential development on Ocean View Road. One item of feedback provided to the developer was that if they proceed, it will be with a public proposal. And that will be all that has been reported out first time. There may be more at the end of the meeting. I'll put forward a motion to adopt the agenda. Can I have a second from council, please? A hand will be fine. Thank you. Any questions, additions, deletions? CAO, this is your chance too.
Under new business at the end of the agenda, I'll have a question for council whether or not you wish to have a cow committee of the whole on November 23rd to hear a presentation from Metro regarding Metro 2050. That's the presentation that they've been doing at all of the member municipalities. And the second thing, call it item B of new business, will just be confirming timing start of the strategic planning session on November 30th and December 1st for that.
Okay, thank you. Item B. Thank you. Councillors, any changes, additions, deletions? Everything done, call a motion. All those in favor of the agenda, please.
Just a quick update from the Climate Action Committee for the November 22nd meeting and the intent there.
Can we, so just a second. Councillor Farmer, let me get this in the right order here. Okay, so the committees will be the trees and the views. So if I could put you as item D2, if that's fine. CAC update, if that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that.
Sorry, Ron.
Yep.
I have one I would like to add.
You guys are killing me. I'm losing $20 if we don't finish by 10 tonight.
And the resolutions, I'd like to add a resolution around the urban containment boundary. Have your say. I can send Carla a quick email with the words now, but it's basically ask the council to direct me to engage with Metro staff to confirm the follow-up process actions in line with the urban containment boundary. Have your say. I can send an email to Carla now with those words.
Thank you very much. Could you do that? And we'll just call it, I'm just going to go HYS as a place mark, and then we'll bring it back live if that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other amendments? There being none, I'll call a motion. All those in favor of the adopted agenda with the different amendments, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Public participation is next up, 2 minutes per, totaling 10. There's members of the gallery. If you'd like to, please unmute and come forward. We'll try and give you a signal if you're at your 2 minutes so the next speaker can speak. Anybody want to come forward? This is the time now. All right, thank you very much.
Speak?
Yes, Marcus. You have the
Yes.
floor.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. Marcus Reuter, Stewart Road. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. And first off, I wanted to thank you all personally for making the effort to ensure that our residents' voices could be heard in the Have Your Say survey on the question of the urban containment boundary. I really do appreciate that and applaud you for making this vital bit of participatory democracy available to us. From the conversations and feedback I've had, this has been a very valuable undertaking. And that there's been a vigorous level of engagement and results of the survey. I understand that the final analysis and tabulation of the commentary may not have been collated yet at this time, but I would hope and think that the simple question of how many responses were collected and what percentage of people favored rural and what percentage of people favored urban and orientation for our village, I would hope that those are available right now. So my question for the councillors at this moment is, can you provide the residents of our village, and I presume and hope the healthy number of those that responded to the survey, with an answer to this question? I'm sure that many of us are eager for an answer. I may have one follow-up if I am so allowed after you've responded to this. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. CAO, if you could respond on behalf of council.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the final tabulation yet. Carla has been working on that. There's tabulations from the website back end. There are emails to the feedback email address. Then there's quite a few paper copies that were delivered. She's got to input all of that, as well as the comments that were received. So we expect that to be done probably by the end of the week, but we don't have that available at this point in time.
Will it be in the village update by the end of the week?
It depends, I guess. We're looking at Carla. I'm not sure whether we
I think the
can
public
commit to
would,
that or not.
I think
But,
CEO, I think the public would take close. We're missing a few folks. Even if we couch it, say preliminary with a few more to come in or something like that, so that the results are somewhat out. Would that work for you?
yeah, I think we could probably indicate for sure what the majority, which way the majority went. I don't want to say at this point commit to anything beyond that. We'll do our best to provide as much information as possible. But yeah.
Yeah, the survey closed yesterday at 4:30 by the time we were done. And today I was inputting close to 100 entries that came in. So I'm not quite finished yet. So I don't feel comfortable reporting out anything, even if it is indicating one way or other. I'd like to have a chance at finishing and properly assessing the results.
Thanks very much, Carla. So Marcus, there's your answer. It looks like it'll be out in print on Friday afternoon. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, and it may be moved at this point, but my question is if the results are strongly in favor in one direction, or when might we expect council to move forward formally on this matter? But I guess that Councillor Abbott brought something forward just before my moment here to that effect.
Yes, I think you're gonna have to stand down till Councillor Abbott's resolution comes forward. That's
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Thank you very much, Marcus, for I certainly recognize it, and you're the founding father of this. So it looks like the baby is delivered one way or the other. Thank you.
Ron, can we
Thank
just
you.
get confirmation? So when will that high level or that trending view be reported? Not until Friday?
I'm working on it. I will work on it tomorrow and the next day, and as soon as I have the results ready, I'll send them to council.
Okay.
And then you can decide how to move forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Other gallery members, this time to come forward, please do. There appears to be no one coming forward, so we'll say thank you very much, Mr. Reuter, for coming forward. And that closes the public participation. And now we'll go to item number 6, which is the public delegation. And we've got Richard White, Planning Advisory Services, Mr. White, and Mr. Pomeroy. And so this is the presentation on the Village of Lions Bay housing needs. So we'll let the delegates go forward.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council, member of the public, staff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep,
Good.
we're good.
Okay, so just checking. It's always an important part of my presentations. So what we've got before you tonight is a housing needs assessment report. Steve Pomeroy will be presenting it in just a moment. He and I have worked together on and off. Actually, we started our careers more or less together in over 40 years ago, and stayed in touch. But this is the first major project we've worked on, these housing needs reports, which are required throughout British Columbia. Each community, even less than a village, just unincorporated areas, parts of the province, are required to produce these documents. The province wants a standardized set across the province, and you're going to be required to provide an update every 5 years, according to the legislation that's now in place. Province made that decision in 2019, but long before that, I think the records will show that affordability and housing adequacy has been a major part of the concerns of British Columbia residents. We've done this type of work in rural, the northern Okanagan rural communities, and affordability there is also an issue for their residents, constituents, and so on. So it's not something that is a lower mainland, South Victoria, Vancouver Island problem or concern. It's something that's an abiding interest across the province. So the province has required us to do that as individual municipalities. We work, RWPAS, our company, works for Anmore and Belcara, 2 villages elsewhere in Metro Vancouver. And amongst Metro Vancouver, the 3 villages, including Lions Bay, are the smallest incorporated communities. So we suggested to Lions Bay early on in our approach to Anmore and Belcara that we would maybe benefit from having Lions Bay participate as well. We might be able to compare notes as things progressed, and we might be able to produce a more efficient project using the resources available. By the way, the province paid for 100% of this work through the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. Lions Bay had to apply for it, and that was done in the spring, as I recollect, and through the summer, and now into the fall, we've prepared the report, which is based on material that Steve will talk about. So very quickly, I wanted to just check my notes here. Yes, another thing to be aware of is it has to be completed and returned to the province by April of 2022. So we're well within that framework. If there are revisions necessary and so on, we'll be able to make changes as required. But this is primarily a technical exercise, as Steve will show you in this following slides. And maybe without further ado, I'll pass it on to Steve. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Richard. I presume folks can hear me okay. So yes, as Richard has indicated, the province set out a fairly prescriptive set of requirements for these particular reports, including a particular format they wanted standardized across the province for all jurisdictions. So we've utilized that in developing this. Metro Vancouver also did a very detailed statistical background analysis, which is appended to the report. So you've got a bit of a brick there. If you have a case of insomnia, that'll do a good job for you. So what we did is we basically did a sort of a detailed analysis, but a sort of a higher level brief of 8 or 9 pages, which is what we sort of have at the front end of the report. And I'm just going to do a quick presentation just to overview the key findings and the key outcomes of that analysis to inform you in terms of going forward. Obviously, I think as Richard indicated, the province does require all municipalities to formally adopt or accept the report for information and then pass it on to the province subsequently. So I guess that would be a requirement at the end of the meeting. So I'll just quickly moving into the report itself. In prescribing this requirement to undertake housing needs analysis, the province is interested in 2 things. One, that all the jurisdictions have completed a detailed analysis to support their official planning process and other planning processes within each jurisdiction in terms of what is the likely population growth, household growth requirements for housing going forward. So that's really sort of the requirements part of the analysis. And secondly, the province is very interested in quantifying the extent to which there are households in various jurisdictions that are unable to acquire housing or access housing in the marketplace, mainly because they have incomes that are too low relative for the areas they live, or they live in dwellings that are in poor condition or overcrowded. So we have these 2 concepts: total requirements, which is the macro requirement, and secondly, a more detailed sort of a smaller requirement, a housing need for those folks who may need assistance. And that's what the province is using to inform the planning they're doing through BC Housing in terms of the allocation and funding of various social housing programs. So we've covered off both of those elements in this report. Just some key details, sort of by way of overview. I'm sure you folks all are very familiar with these particular aspects of Lions Bay. You're obviously a predominantly a residential community. You don't really have any business economic base there of any extent. 95% of the working population work outside of the village and commute to work elsewhere. You're predominantly single family homes. And very, very high level of home ownership comparative to both the national level, which is 68%, and the metro level, which is 64% of home ownership. And also in terms of the dwelling form, across metro, where you've got a lot more multi-res buildings, only 30% of the stock across metro on average are single family dwellings, whereas in your case, it's over 90%. Because you're predominantly home ownership, of course, the flip side of that coin is you have very few rentals, and most of the rentals you had would either be people renting an entire home or else renting a portion of a home in the form of secondary suites. And we're aware that you have a secondary suite register there in Lions Bay, and that really enumerates sort of some of the secondary suites that aren't actually captured very well in the census data, which we used in the analysis. So your own administrative data was actually very helpful in identifying that particular aspect of the local housing market. In terms of incomes, obviously a very relatively high income area in comparison to metro as a total. And you also tend to be, obviously with single family dwellings, you've got a lot of families, but many of those families are now aging, and you've got a lot of sort of so-called empty nesters, 1 or 2 folks living in a larger single family dwelling. Obviously, they've got some families in there as well, which is why your average household size is 2.7 persons. So there's a bunch of kids being counted there as well. So slightly higher than the metro total, which of course in metro, you've got a lot of single person households living in small apartments. So you would expect to be slightly bigger than those in terms of household size. One of the key pieces, which we'll come back to again at the end in terms of the conclusions, is what we identify as this mismatch, and it's not unique to Lions Bay. We see it in the 3 villages as well, less so in metro. But you have a very over 50% of your households, which is the blue bar, have 2 or fewer persons, so 1 or 2 people, but only 1/5 of the dwellings are smaller dwellings of 2 or fewer bedrooms. So you've got, small households rattling around in large houses. Some of them may be quite happy doing that. There may be some cases where folks that live in the community would like to stay in Lions Bay, would like to downsize, but there really aren't any housing opportunities in the local market to downsize to. And that's one of the key findings that we'll come back to in terms of the implications of the analysis. In terms of affordability, obviously you're a relatively high cost residential area. Because we used the 2016 census data, these numbers are obviously a little bit dated. If we use real estate data, which we did, we weren't able to get at the discrete scale of the villages, so we stayed with the census data. But nonetheless, I mean, relatively speaking, compared to metro, you're 75% higher your median home price, and even in the case of renters, those folks who are renting because they're renting in some cases for entire homes, in other cases they're part of the home. Your rents tend to be over $1,500, and many of them over $2,000. So there's really nothing that we would consider affordable rentals at the lower end of the rental market in the Lions Bay market. The fact that you happen to have a population that has much higher incomes than the regional average, and the predominant housing issue, and we do these needs analysis, is one of affordability. People simply can't afford the housing, or they're paying significantly more than 50% of their income for that housing. When you have high incomes, you reduce the incidence of that particular problem. And also when we look at tenure, we do tend to see that housing need is much more significant, much more extensive amongst renter households, mainly because on average, renter households, the median income of renters is less than half that of owners. As folks get more income, they tend to buy a house, and the folks that don't have as much income tend to continue renting. It's not exclusively income-based, but that's the general trend. And so we see here, both for Metro and in Lions Bay, the differential isn't quite as big in Lions Bay, but nonetheless, quite a bit. There is a $50,000 difference between the median income of owners and the median income of renters. This is a little bit of a busy chart. I'll just explain it to you. But what we're trying to look at is the extent to which folks that currently rent could actually afford to, if they aspire to home ownership, to actually purchase a home. So we looked at what is the median income of renter households, assuming that they spent 30% of that income on a mortgage at 3% over 25 years. How much mortgage could they afford? And then we add on 10% for a down payment to see what house price they could actually afford. So in Lions Bay's case, your median renter household, the most they could afford is a home at $427,000. Your median home price is almost 1.4 million. So we could conclude that clearly the median household in Lions Bay, renter household in Lions Bay, can't afford to buy there, and nor can the median renter household from Metro, who have even lower incomes and who could only actually leverage a mortgage and afford a home of $286,000. So it's not very accessible for folks who are trying to move up the housing ladder, as it were, from being renters to being owners. That's a pretty consistent pattern across the villages. Belcarra and Anmore, actually, the slightly higher incomes for renters and slight higher capacity, but still not enough to be able to afford the median home. That's obviously the median is half the homes are more expensive, half the homes are less. So there may be some homes in the first quintile, 10th quintile, etc., or percentile rather, that might be affordable. So it's not to say that nothing's affordable, but it's much less affordable for those folks than in other places. So that's sort of a general sort of perspective in terms of general housing affordability. In terms of the more narrow criteria that the province requires us to look at, this concept of what's called core housing need. This is a methodology that was developed by Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation in the 1980s. It's used consistently across the country to assess a housing need, and it uses 3 measures. Is the household paying more than 30% of their income for their shelter, whether it's only owned or rented? Are they living in a home that's in need of major repair in terms of condition? And is the home too small relative to the number of people in the home and the composition in terms of the age and gender of children and that type of thing? I won't get into the technical details, but that's the general concept. And then there's a second test to say, okay, they may be experiencing one of these problems, but do they actually have sufficient income that they could afford to solve this problem without any help from the government? And to do that analysis, they add in this sort of income criteria, which simply takes the what income would be necessary to afford the median rental unit for an appropriate unit size for each household in the metropolitan region without spending more than 30% of their income for their shelter. So if, for example, if your median rent was $1,500 a month, you would multiply by 12 months, divide by 0.3 and get an income of $60,000. So anyone with an income above $60,000 that experienced one of these three problems wouldn't be considered to be in core need. Anybody below 60,000 experiencing one of them would be. So when we do that analysis in Lions Bay, we find a very small number of households, only 5.3 of all households in Lions Bay were found to be falling below those standards. That's very, very low relative to pretty well any community I've done work in across Canada, and certainly much lower than that in Metro Vancouver, where it's almost 18% of households are in core housing need. Normally, when we do this analysis in larger cities or larger communities where there are more people, whenever you do statistical analysis, when you've got small populations and you try to cross-tabulate and break things down by different characteristics, so we're splitting it by tenure, we're also splitting it by household type, we'd like to be able to split it by age, and really drill in to find out who are the groups who are really in need. We weren't able to do that in the three villages just because your populations are that much smaller than a lot of other places. And so using the gross level, the key sort of indicator that came out was that those 5.3% of your total households that are in need tend more likely to be sort of older couples and singles, age 45 to 65, and more particularly lone parents. And single person households as well. And we find that those two groups do tend to stand out as the dominant households in need in terms of the incidence of need. There may be more families in need just because there are many more two couple families. But naturally, because the predominant problem is one of affordability, we find that households who only have one income, which is the case of lone parents and the case of singles, are much more prominent amongst the core need population. So that's what we find here as well. The other aspect of the needs analysis is to basically the province wants to project forward and anticipate over the next 10 years how many more dwellings are going to be required in each community, how many more households are going to be in need, and how is the province going to work with the municipalities to respond both to housing requirements and to housing need. On the housing requirements side, of course, they require you to plan for the anticipated growth in population and how that translates into additional households. And the case of need, as I mentioned, how BC Housing is going to respond in terms of supporting affordable development. So in terms of population growth across the region, and particularly in the villages, because the villages are quite small already, they have somewhat limited land mass, a limited ability to actually expand. We do see quite slow population growth across the three villages, and in the case of Lions Bay, it's pretty well stagnant. There is 0.5% growth in the decade from 2006 to 2016 in terms of households. And then the number of actual that's the population growth. As a housing analyst, I always work with households rather than individuals because it's the household that consumes housing units, not necessarily just individuals. And when we look on the household size, we actually see the number of households declined marginally by about 20 households over that 10-year period as well. So you may have lost a few households to demolition of units, that type of thing. And in terms of new construction, very, very little new construction has occurred. I'm sure you guys are directly aware of this just from walking down the street. You've only built and this sort of overlaps the census period a little bit. We went from 2011 to 2019. You added 13 homes. 3 of them we demolished the existing home to build something new. So the net gain was only 10 units or 10 homes, or essentially 1 home per year. So very, very little new housing growth. And most of those new dwellings that have been built, in fact, every one of them that has been built, have been single detached dwellings. So if we go back to the very early slide in terms of this mismatch issue, we're not really addressing the mismatch because the actual kind of housing that's continuing to being built is being built for larger families. It's not being built to enable folks that live in the village to actually downsize to something smaller, should they want to. That's not to say that everybody wants to. Some people are very happy. They've got a lifetime of memories, they've got emotional attachment to the home, and they may want to stay there. Others, however, both just for personal reasons, but also in some cases for health reasons and ergonomic ability to get around a home with stairs, etc., may wish if it were available, to downsize to something smaller. So I think that's a really important planning consideration for the village. In terms of going forward, despite the fact that you had very little growth for those 10 years between the 2006-2016 census, in doing its population projections, and the CAO I think mentioned the Metro 2050, which is the process that Metro is using to project population growth across the region, it's much easier to do projections at a regional scale and metro scale, but then you have to ask how are you going to allocate that growth in population to all of the jurisdictions within the region. So the Metro does try to do that, and they look both at sort of natural growth in terms of how many families there are, what's the birth rate, how many folks are deceased and dying off, particularly obviously at the older age groups, and then figure out from that what's the natural growth, population growth, and in addition, the bigger unknown tends to be migration, not necessarily international, but just migration of folks moving around the region, moving from the rest of the country or from other parts of BC. That's a harder one to nail down, and it becomes a bit of an innovative process. A small community like your own that has a very limited land available to develop. Obviously, they're not going to project massive growth if there isn't any land to accommodate it. So I think they do work with and do their projections with each of the jurisdictions to try and assess, is there potential for new land development, new servicing of lots, and what could that accommodate? So through that process, they have projected that in the 10 years from 2016 to 26, which we're now in the middle of, you would actually have growth of 82 households. We've seen very few in the first 5 years of that period. So maybe the back end, you need to get a lot of growth and or you don't meet the projection, which is possible as well. But if you were to try and meet that projection, you would need to add essentially 8 new homes a year, which is obviously a lot more than you've been adding over the last 10 years. Finally, just sort of in terms of the type of home that ideally you should be adding, and again, going back to this mismatch issue, if we look at sort of, as a typology of household size and dwelling size, and we sort of say, well, okay, singles, they don't need a 4-bedroom house. They'd probably be fine in a 2-bedroom house or 1-bedroom den, something like that. A couple with no kids, perhaps 2 bedrooms or a small townhouse, and then families, obviously the traditional home. To the extent that your demographics and your aging population and aging in place suggest that we'll have increasing number of smaller older households, it does suggest we need to try to, or you need to try to direct the industry to build a product that may actually better fit with the population profile that's going to emerge over time and people's preferences for housing. And so you can see right now, 82% of your stock single family dwellings, and you've got some smaller units, but more often in the form of secondary suites within homes. Ideally, going forward, you should actually own less than half of your new production should actually be for single family, and you should be trying to promote and encourage smaller homes, which could be doubling up, semi-detached, perhaps even triplexes on some lots, if you're actually knocking down an existing house and rebuilding or infilling or renovating the existing homes. So that's quite a significant change in the ideal built form that you should try and encourage. In terms of the future growth of core housing need, if we use a very simplistic methodology and assume that the incidence of need in the future is similar to what it was in 2016, only 5.3% of your new growth would be folks in need, which would be an extremely small number to the point that it's really insignificant, two households over 10 years. So it's not really a consideration in the case of Lions Bay. Obviously, much bigger consideration in the bigger municipalities, and certainly some of the mid-sized, even sort of smaller communities that we looked at in the Okanagan in some previous work. So finally, in terms of what does this all mean for you? Going back to the point I made at the beginning, I mean, this mismatch issue in terms of the form of existing homes and the characteristics of your population going forward. Is this something that is a concern to the community? Are the folks in there? I heard you talking about a survey earlier. I don't know what you covered in your survey, whether you asked people what their preferences for housing are in the future. If you didn't, it would be a good kind of question to ask folks. And do you actually have demand for smaller types of units? Continuing to going on. I mean, the building industry will tend to continue to want to build larger 3-4 bedroom homes for larger families that they can sell for fairly high prices. As a municipality, is that what you want? And can you direct the industry to build smaller dwellings that can accommodate different preferences? And that may include, expanding the secondary suites that you already have, as well as potentially building some smaller, triplex, duplex type units that may be more apartment style within a building that kind of looks like a single detached home. Obviously, you're concerned about the appearance of the homes and the compatibility with the existing community. So that's obviously a planning consideration as well. The actual size of the individual dwellings within those structures should ideally be moving towards smaller unit sizes. So that's a quick overview of a relatively detailed report, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Very much, Mr. Pomeroy. Councillors, any questions for our delegates?
I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to be the first one.
All right, I see Councillor Abbott's warming up there.
No, I was going to suggest, I thought we have this report later in the agenda. I assumed we were going to discuss it later in the agenda, time permitting. So I wasn't actually going to ask any questions right now. I was just asking was more a process or procedural question. We're not discussing the actual report at this point, right?
It might be an idea to bring forward the report at this point, so that if you have questions, and sounds like Councillor Barmeyer has questions, that the planners are available to answer those questions rather than me.
My only concern is, will we get to all the other stuff on the agenda if we did that? Because I think there's a lot to consider here, and a lot in this report.
Well,
Your Worship, at least I could come back another night if that's, we're not aware of the size of your agenda, but we certainly are on contract to provide answers to council's questions.
thank you very much, Richard. And I suspect that's probably what's going to happen. In fact, as councillors, I'll take the nod that we do have a very full agenda tonight. We appreciate the presentation, but it may be that the item later on in the agenda, which is more fulsome discussion on the report, may not be done tonight, or something else might get bumped. So I think with that then, from my colleagues, unless you think otherwise, then we'll say goodnight to the delegates. And we just may accept you on your generous offer to come back.
So would it be appropriate then, Your Worship, for us to come off the call? I don't want to put the CAO at any disadvantage in terms of answering questions, but
I think he's a big guy. He can handle it.
okay.
I don't know if you want to canvass any of the questions that Norm has. Or...
Okay, Norm, Councillor Abbott, or sorry, Councillor Barmeyer. We've got another minute here if you've got some questions that.
It was just more of just a thought and a question, I guess. I'm curious about the alignment with the mandate, sort of the provincial mandate, or it sounds like it's a provincial initiative, and how that initiative looks at how well a community is supported by infrastructure, larger scale infrastructure, regional infrastructure. So we talk about comparisons to Metro Vancouver, for example, and they're bolstered by community infrastructure, water and sewer, tons of scale of economy, and they can afford to scale up that infrastructure to support development, to support expansion of their communities. Lions Bay is pretty limited in that extent. We don't have that kind of utility or infrastructure expansion support or funding. So I'm just curious how those mandates align, and whether there's any indication from the province to support small communities like ours with infrastructure build out. It's just sort of a general question, because as a community and in the things that we value, we've already included secondary suites and carriage homes as part of our official community plan. We support that initiative. We support the idea of growing in place. We support the idea of additional housing options. So our community is already there. and supports the idea. I think where it becomes difficult is in our utility limitations. So I'm just curious about how we find alignment there. And is there any money, basically? Will the province pay for our infrastructure?
So Steve, why don't you give him the technical answer? I'll give him the political one as best I can.
Sure. I mean, I think, yeah, because the mandate was created, for all jurisdictions, and it predominantly is looking at the mid-size and larger ones. I don't really think it was designed for very small jurisdictions like you're talking about, Councillor. So I think it's, it was a requirement to provide information to local communities to help to give them some information to inform their decision-making process. And I think, as you've just pointed out, if you've already gone through a process of identifying opportunities to provide infill coach houses, that type of thing, you could quite easily respond to the province when you submit the report to them and say, just for your information, we've already done these things. We anticipated that this type of analysis in our official plan, and the next update of the plan will consider these things as well. And I don't think you would be obligated, to basically go out and produce 82 houses just because the report says that's what the projections are.
The other thing that we think about in terms of this as a policy document is that the province wants the municipalities to recognize they've already got some problems that may be hidden to a certain extent or unaddressed, perhaps. Certainly that's, might be the case in some municipalities. And we find that there is some core need in Lions Bay. There are people that are paying a large percentage of their income to live in a home in Lions Bay. There's also the more, it's sort of an undercurrent. People that are well heeled can live in a big house, but maybe don't want to live in one anymore and don't really have an alternative. And that's something that I think that we've found throughout the work we've done in small communities and large, is that there are households that would like to live in a community but cannot really change where they live too efficiently because that type of housing isn't available. And you point out that water and sewer, those sorts of modern services are harder to provide in a village. Sanitary sewer treatment plants and so on, hard to create, and you may never get funding for that in a small community because it's just the money has to be spent elsewhere to serve a broader group of households. It's hard to say, but the province has a baseline now, and they'll be able to address these problems in different ways in different places. And I think that's probably what is this serves the province's interest as much as it serves Lions Bay. I think would be a fair thing to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And as again, we may be asking you back to see us again. Thank you very much for your presentation and your dissertation afterwards.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Bye-bye. Thank you, which brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the council meeting minutes of October 26th. And I'll put that forward. Can I have a second, please, from Councillor? Thank you. Any changes, amendments to this one? I have none. Unmute. Works Manager Jaffer.
Is there a verbal update on the ILD paving on there?
It's on the October 26th agenda meeting. Your verbal replies comes up in about another 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. There being no changes to the meeting minutes of October 26th, I'll call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes or hand up. Opposed, no. Thank you. Carried. Next one, similar vein, meeting of November the 8th. And I'll put forward that the special council meeting minutes of November 8th be approved as circulated. I'll put that forward. Can I have a second? Thank you. Any changes, amendments, additions, deletions? Appears none. I'll call a motion. Those all in favor of the minutes as recorded, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. Now, Mr. Jaffer, Lions Bay paving, you've got a verbal update. What can you say when the rain stops?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, when the rain stops and the clouds clear, the temperature drops too low, which is essentially where we're at with Isleview Place. The temperatures are too low to install an overlay. So we're looking at postponing the pavement until the new year. The current contract is effective until May 31st, 2022. So we're well within time frame to be able to get that done in the new year.
Thank you very much, Works Manager. Nature being what it is, fickle, and the equipment's all gone now, isn't it? They pulled out.
I believe so, yeah.
Good, thanks. Councillors, any questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. None. Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffer. Unfinished business, which is item number 9. I think on the first one, which is the beach park revitalization, we're coming up to that later on, Peter, or is there something? Yep. So we'll hold that, but it looks like that's going to be a straight. Next time, Green and Inclusive Community Building Program, CFO, any verbal updates?
Yes, I reached out to the ministry to get clarification regarding our eligibility, because it was described as the project must improve the services for higher needs and underserved populations. So when I got clarification on their definition of that, they used examples of lower socioeconomic populations, remote populations, and populations with challenges due to social and environmental barriers, disability, economic status. It became pretty clear that we weren't eligible for this grant.
Okay.
And it's quite an onerous grant, a lot of questions. So we're hopeful that with the cancellation of the CARET grants and the increasing climate focus of government, that we're getting a sense that there will be more climate grants being available. So we'll just keep our eyes open for another grant.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions with CFO?
Right. Sorry.
Mr. Barmer's got a message for you.
I think Councillor Abbott has a question.
Yes, Councillor Abbott.
We jumped over business arising. I didn't hear yes for business arising. I thought Mr. Jaffer's report was around business arising. I had a few things.
How about we conclude this and we'll go back, if that's fine?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, CFO. We'll just regroup and go back to business rising. Councillor Abbott, you have something?
I do. On page 29, the stop sign, does the Wishaw manager have an update for us? Are we engaging an engineer? Where did that go? Or what's happening?
So we are required to engage an engineer, and that will come forward during the budget process, and I'll also touch on it during the strategic planning session as well.
Thank you very much, Works Manager.
Sorry, I will add that until we do engage an engineer and have them review that intersection, the stop signs stay.
Thank you very much, Works Manager. Municipal Coordinator, the next item, which is the unfinished business, can you draw up number 238 and make it today's date? And let's call it railway crossing stop signs. And we'll tack the CAO and the Public Works Manager to do future reports on that. So Councillor Abbott, I'm sure you're happy. That'll be with us till we're settled one way or the other. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
We're going to need budget to do anything. So, I mean, this is going to keep coming until we have budget.
Well, it's going to come until you solve it.
Yeah, but we won't be able to do anything without budget. So,
Okay,
I don't know.
It's fine.
It just seemed
it's there.
premature to put it on this list.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we will move over to staff reports, which is the first one, CFO. This is we've got a
I've got some more unfinished business. On page 30, the procurement policy and how it's applicable to committees. Can that go in the unfinished business report, or what are we doing next with that?
Well, staff is still working away on that and pulling together pieces of information that will be pertinent to how we go forward with it. So if you want to put it on the unfinished business list,
That will
that's
be
fine.
number 239, Carla.
Thank
So
you.
make, again, so we're going to keep it on the carry forward on the agenda, Councillor Abbott.
Okay. And
Thank
then I
you.
have one more that's more a matter arising out of the minutes than unfinished business. On the top of page 32, sorry, page numbers are, I'm using a different set of minutes. This discussion around the communications policy. And when I suggested that you could only respond to an email, the mayor could only respond to an email unless if there was an urgent need. That's not actually accurate. I did go read the two policies. It says you can do so in the case of just being timely, when the desire to be timely. So that and that came about with the suggestion that others, that whoever's doing the correspondence should respond sooner than the next meeting. So I can kind of report back that I think I derailed that suggestion because I said it was out of line with the policy, but it's actually not. So I don't know if anyone wants to bring that up again, or not. If you, Mr. the mayor wants to bring it up again, we could.
Well, I thank you very much. I'm going to go through in a second, Councillor Barmer. Well, I'm fully endorse the councillor who's on the rotation to respond as they will. I mean, the current one where it's the mayor does. I mean, that's fine if it's, you know, burning bush, it's probably going to happen anyhow. But for the rest of the stuff, it spreads the workload around. It keeps our councillors involved in the community, and it gives you a face in the community too. So I'm very supportive of it, whether we put it in legislation or not, and do it informally. We'll come back to this, Councillor Barmer.
Yeah, I guess it's under business arising from our page 39 of the special meeting of council, where we're bringing forward Matthias Jakob, BGC Engineering, to do a presentation on geohazards and DPAs. I was wondering if we're going to get a more fulsome picture on the DPA question, not just the geohazards, and wondering if this is one of a series of professional subject matter expert input into DPAs, or if it's just strictly geohazards that we'll be focusing on.
Thank you very much.
I was kind of hoping to get a bit more rounded conversation on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barmer. I'm going to let the CEO think about that while we go back to the issue of the correspondence. So, Councillor Abbott, did you get what you wanted out of that? In my view, until we change it officially, whoever's on rotation should be. Fine. Good.
Yeah.
So, thank you very
I'm
much.
interested. Oh, sorry, I'm more interested to hear where we're going with what Norm just said. But anyway, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And so back to the CEO in response to Councillor Barmer.
As the minutes indicate, it's to be presented on geohazards and DPA guidelines, and the summary of the content, the intended content of the discussion at that meeting was sort of laid out in the email that I sent to each of you with the documents that you were asked to review in advance of that meeting, so that you can refresh your memory and get up to speed on where we've been so far. But yeah, certainly all aspects of the matter are intended to be covered for discussion.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, councillors, for bringing that stuff up. All good. Thank you.
Sorry, Peter. So are we getting another report from this gentleman before that meeting, or are we reviewing the old information in the meeting?
Just reviewing the information that's been provided, and I provided you with sort of an outline of the intended matters on which Mr. Jacob will touch on and enter into discussion with council, or engender a discussion with council. There's no separate report coming on top of that. I wasn't planning on it anyways. It would basically just say what I said in the email with the attachments that have already been sent.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, although probably someone wishing I don't, but I honestly think council should be having a discussion about where we want to go with this before we engage another consultant. I think that meeting is premature. I really do. I think we should talk amongst ourselves about where we're trying to go with this before we bring another consultant into a meeting.
Well, I think the idea is so that, the idea is to have a discussion with somebody who's able to address a lot of the questions that have come up previously. And so that you've got the opportunity to have a wide ranging discussion about all of the different aspects of this. And then you can think about, okay, where do you want to go with this from here? But you need to get that past that first step in order to, it would be backwards to meet and discuss where you want to end up on the subject matter before you've had an opportunity to really have a full and frank discussion about where you've been and what all the different issues are, what some of the big questions are that you need to think about. Those are things that are going to be helpful to discuss with Mr. Jacob, who can answer probably a lot of questions that I think you're probably going to have. And then there's lots of opportunity after that to think about where do you want to go from there. You can go any which direction, from there. So I think it's important to have a subject matter expert who can provide you with that educated discussion, answer some of your questions, rather than just me regurgitating what I've provided and gone over with council twice before on the subject matter. So I really think it's going to be beneficial to have that conversation with someone else who can, who's a leading expert in the field.
We're already booked for this meeting, so the kind of questions are informative, but I do have my eye on the clock. Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I guess the thing I'm struggling with is we've gone through this before and we're going over some of the same material again. It sounds like we're expecting a different outcome. Maybe Mr. Jacob can provide more information that we've had before. I grant that, but when the meeting was discussed, it was an add-on to the last meeting, and it was just not discussing the topic. It was just pick a date. So we didn't really have much time to think about it and just pick a date. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, quite frankly, if I can just say that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. I'd like to move on now. Is that fine with everybody? Okay.
I'd like to make a suggestion that that we first have a council discussion about that before we have that meeting. And I'd like to put forward that we postpone that meeting. Do I have a second?
Second. So the motion is that you want to have a meeting before we have the meeting.
I think council should review what the last councils said when this thing was shelved 3.5 years ago, and go from there and understand what we want to do. Do we want to do something different? What we want to, and then we can inform this consultant something that's more instead of all going into the meeting. And then I just think we can structure that meeting better if we have a discussion ourselves and see if we can get some alignment about where we want this matter to go, because it clearly didn't go very well last time, and now we're just doing the same thing, as Fred says, with a different person.
We're not doing the same thing. The idea is to introduce something new to the equation. If we were simply going to discuss it amongst ourselves, we would be doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So the idea is to not do that. The idea is to review all of the material that has been sent so that you can get yourselves back up to speed. And then that discussion takes place in an open meeting, which is that committee of the whole meeting, and you can discuss all the concepts and your questions about it. You got someone there who can answer them much better than I can. And it's going to lead to further discussions. It's not going to be the last meeting on this topic by any means, I'm sure, but it's a great way to start it off. And he's already been retained. He's got the material. He's already spent time reviewing it. So we're already committed in many respects.
Thank you very much, CIO. So I think just to be clear on what the motion is, Councillor Abbott, your original words were you wanted to have a meeting before we had this meeting, which is it's Tuesday night now, and we're here for next Wednesday. You're suggesting that council have a fully informed meeting between now and next Wednesday, which doesn't seem possible. So really what you're asking for is that next Wednesday's meeting be canceled.
I think I said postpone, but yes, cancel if you like.
Well, canceled is the word. All right, I think we all get it. I don't think there's much more to say. I'll call a motion. All those in favor of canceling the previously agreed meeting on for next Wednesday, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
No.
I have to abstain. I'm ambivalent about it. Either way, we're going to have to discuss this, but I'm not in favor of a regurgitation of the last presentation that was given to us at a previous council. So I'm going to abstain at this point.
Thank you. And abstain is a yes.
Yeah, I want to give this the benefit of the doubt. I was on the fence prior to the meeting. I had the same fears that we'd just be having the same material sort of reshuffled and repackaged. But if the genuine intent here is to present it in a new way and have a fulsome discussion and sort of continue this conversation in a productive way, then I'm open to the meeting on the 24th.
That would be a yes then. Okay, Councillor Abbott, it's yes or no?
Sorry, I'm confused. I think Norm said no to my resolution.
He's in favor of holding the meeting.
Yes. So he asked us to vote yes or no, and to the suggestion that it got cancelled, I said yes. Councillor Bain said yes, and now I'm confused about how this voted. So can we just do it again?
Let's just redo it for clarity. So
No cancellation.
So it's no cancellation.
The motion failed.
The motion has failed.
Good.
Thank you. Now we will move on to item 10. Staff reports. CFO with the Christmas office closure. The reports before you. Thank you.
Yes, staff are proposing, because of when Christmas and New Year's falls this year, we're going to propose that the village office be closed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, from the 29th to the 31st. And basically staff would use bank time, vacation, or unpaid leave to cover these days, or, you know, they could still work. But by doing this, it does not require to have office coverage of the front desk. So it allows staff to have an extended Christmas break if they would like that. So we're asking council to approve the closure of the village office from Wednesday, December 29th to Friday, December 31st, 2021.
Any questions from the council?
Is there going to be no one in the office? Or are we going to have a skeleton person? I mean, it's...
Potentially.
Well, that's the idea. I mean, if someone wanted to come in, they could still work. We can't force someone to take vacation, but we need a minimum of 2 people, preferred 3 people during that time in the office. And it's a very, very quiet time. So by closing the office, then, you know, people can take that time as vacation. It is a common practice of a lot of municipalities to close between Christmas and New Year's because it is such a quiet time. It would just be the village office. It wouldn't be public works. They would still have to come in. But it just means we wouldn't have to answer the phones and it is very quiet then, or answer the door. We wouldn't have to have the staff member who does that position come in. So it enables them to take vacation over that time.
What happens if someone wanted to, for example, pay the utilities bill?
And they could put it through the slot. That's most people pay online now, or they would just write a check and put it through the slot. We get very, very few payments between that time. And we would put something in the village update letting people know.
Okay. And then there'll be no village update that week, obviously, because no one's working. But if there, what would we do if there was some need to put a notification out?
We don't have a village update during that week, so it would even when so it would be if there was an emergency one, I guess. I'm not sure.
Well, then we could do it remotely. If we had to.
Okay. I've just got one last question.
Sure.
Boxing Day is not a statutory holiday. But this report reads as if it is.
It's on a statutory holiday per the union agreement. And it is recognized pretty much by everyone, Boxing Day.
Okay, so recognized by the union agreement, but it's not actually a statutory holiday in BC. It is in Ontario.
I believe it's statutory in BC.
No, it's not.
I don't think it is. It's recognized.
I know for a fact it's not. I don't get it off, but our Ontario office does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're correct. It's not a stat, but a lot of, because of that, most union agreements have put it in as a stat for that very reason, because it isn't a provincial stat.
Thank you very much, CFO. I'll put forward the motion that the council approves the closure of the village office from Wednesday, December 29th to Friday, December 31st. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Good. Any further discussion, councillors? Being none, call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes or raising your hand. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Carried. CFO, still on the podium. And the motion is that the 2021 third quarter review, which is actually the 10/12, not the 3/4 review, be received for information purposes. Please continue.
So as the mayor has indicated, I did run this report up to all invoices that had been paid to the end of October, just to make it up to date as possible. And it includes payroll expenses up to November 3rd, which would be 85% of the payroll. So I guess our usual approach is just to ask council if they have any questions, if you want to continue.
There we go. Councillors, if you give me some latitude, we'll let others speak for a little bit. So on rotation, why don't we split this in two? We'll go with the CapEx as part two. Part one will be anything to do with the financial performance, the P&L. So and I hate to pick on you, Councillor Cunliffe, but we'll start with you, then go to Councillor Bain and Councillor Barmere, Councillor Abbott, and myself.
I'm good.
Thank you very
I'll pass
much.
it on to Councillor Bain.
Councillor Barmere.
I just had made myself a few small comments, and they're less questions, Pam, and more just commentary. The first being whether we can somehow highlight how much additional revenue this council has fostered through compliance and fee adjustments, because it seems like we're showing quite a bit of revenue there from both parking fines and parking meters. It's significant. And possibly use this as a way to highlight the importance of revenue generation within the village as a way to bolster our coffers. The other comment I had, it related back to the EV chargers and the reflection of the $75,000 grant, and wondering when we'll have an opportunity to discuss that in light of what the grants are actually offering, because they change, and how much flexibility we have to flex with what the grants offer. So that was in respect to the EV chargers and another potential revenue stream. And the last comment I had was, yeah, no, that's it actually. That's it. Those are all my comments. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmere. If I can, on behalf of us to the CFO and the CAO, the bylaw officer report, and also our Parking revenue, for lack of a better word, is going to come forward next month, correct? So if we could expand that to do a couple of columns to the side going back for a couple of years to show what the revenue generation has been. I mean, I can remember when our parking revenue was $14,000 and we're a little past that now. So I think it'd be worthwhile if you could go back, let's say to the last year of the former council to now. And I think that's what Councillor Barmer is looking for. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. Good. And Councillor Bain, any questions?
Well, I had half a dozen of them, but I went over it again and I figured it out by Pam's accounting. So good going, Pam. I appreciate it. Thanks.
There you go. Councillor Rabbit.
Yeah, likewise of less questions. I think either we're understanding it better or Pam's explanations are getting better. I'm not sure which, but most of them are explained. I have one question on the parking permits. Do you have any idea why we have sold so many additional parking permits?
Yes.
And I have heard someone, before you go any further, I have heard a suggestion that there may be some abuse of these additional permits being given to non-residents. And that's why I asked the question. That is a marked increase.
The parking passes.
Passes, yeah.
Yeah, basically, I did look into that and I apologize. I should have, after I published it, I should have written down the comment. A lot of it was construction permits, actually, and it was the bylaw officers and the enforcement of construction vehicles. So we had a lot more than I had planned on and budgeted coming in to get construction permits. So they were valid permits, and they would often get 2 or 3 per site for their different trucks, because there was, with the 7-day-a-week bylaw coverage we had, they were getting caught with not having construction permits to park. And we did see an increase as well in resident parking passes. And again, it had to do with the enforcement issue that everyone gets 2 tickets, or sorry, 2 passes. But as you probably know, a lot of houses here have 3 cars, sometimes 4 cars for the kids. So it was residents coming in to purchase additional tickets for their family members. And when they come in, we ask for their address, and a lot of them we recognize. So I don't feel there was any abuse. The biggest increase was because of the construction permits. We had a lot of compliance this year with people, and with all the work being done in the village with renovations, with contractors coming in and getting permits. So that was why the increase.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, any more questions, or I'll conclude?
On page 53 there's one explanation I didn't quite understand. Note 2. Flat maintenance costs and utilities are allocated to fire search and rescue and ambulance at the end of the year. So you're saying that the money comes out of this fund?
Yeah, some of it goes in this fund to other accounts in this fund, and other goes to fire. We've been doing this for a few years, but we take the ambulance square footage, SAR square footage, ESS, EOC, and the fire. And because we have different accounts for those, it's really just a notional entry, but it gives us sort of a sense. We take the utility bills and then what we call the general maintenance for the CLAT building, and then we allocate it to the different areas. And that's why the utilities is showing so high. That entry isn't done to the end of the year. So it was really just explaining the variance in some of the accounts, that the allocation entry under maintenance, that's where the CLAT maintenance account is. And under utilities, that will be allocated. The biggest chunk goes to fire. And it's really just an internal entry. It has no impact on the bottom line, but we started doing it a few years ago just to kind of get a sense of the different departments and the cost. Because there is an expense to SAR, even though, we don't charge the rent, nor do we want to, but there is a charge because they use some of the square footage in our building.
So, all right. So we're not necessarily forecasting a big overrun. It's just, it'll be.
No. It was really just my way of explaining what it looks like utilities, because I budget the net amount after the adjustment, but until I do the adjustment, and it's a lot of work to do the adjustment, so I don't do it quarterly. I just do it at the end of the year.
Great. Thank you very much. Are you good, Councillor Abbott? One more.
Yeah, let's move on.
Thank you very much. For me, great presentation, CFO. Love the fines, parking lots, and street revenue. I think that's a rather significant contributor to our operation. Just to show that I do look at the stuff, and only because it's in almost a $25,000 difference in building permits. Did we overshoot, or are they running in the door right now?
We have a few, we have a couple more would probably get to the end of the year that I think I've explained in the past. It's one of the more challenging revenue numbers to budget. Even when I worked at West Vancouver, it was challenging. You're trying to budget the unknown. I'm not sure we will meet budget this year.
Okay.
But we do have a couple potential that will come in December or January.
Good. Just making sure that you got this eye contact thing going here, that we do look at stuff. Okay, thanks very much. That's pretty much the P&L side. I'll open it back up on the CapEx summary. We're pretty much hitting everything. I really don't have any questions other than I see a whole bunch of stuff under budgets and finished. So I'm good with that. Let's go in reverse order. Councillor Abbott, any questions on the CapEx summary? I tell you what page it is. Unfortunately, I can't.
I have one question. It's not so much on the financing side. It's in these notes, the status notes on the Lions Bay Connector project. What is meant by reviewing notes from Modi?
First page, kind of 2/3 of the way down, first page. 2/3 of the way down, it's Lions Bay Connector.
That's,
So reviewing notes from Modi.
Yep.
That is with respect to their feedback on the highway right-of-way, off-ramp, on-ramp issues, bus shelter, etc. That's what that was.
Okay. Any other questions on the CapEx, Councillor Abbott?
No.
Good, thank you. Let's go in reverse. Councillor Bain, any questions on the CapEx? Nope, good. Councillor Barmer, any questions on CapEx?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Councillor Cunliffe?
Just a big thank you to Pam.
Thank you very much. And I think on behalf of all of council, thank you very much. We like the budget, we like to spend on these CapEx, so thank you very much. So I think where we were was that the third quarter review be received for information purposes. Did I put that forward, Caroline? I don't think so. I'll put that forward. Can I have a hand for a second? Thank you. Call a motion. All those in favor, confirm by saying yes, opposed no. Thank you, Carrie. Next up is the great job, CFO. And is the Public Works Manager. And this is on the wildfire risk reduction and fuel management at 3 critical infrastructure sites in the village. And the motion is that council award the wildfire risk reduction and fuel management contract to Silverback Tree Works in the amount of $25,850, and that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute contract documents substantially in the form attached. I'll put that forward. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. Works Manager, what's the story?
So it's pretty straightforward. This is in response to the grant from the EBCM for Fire Smart. Essentially, we went out to bid. Silverback was the low bid significantly. Staff is comfortable that they're able to do what they promise and do it well. So we're recommending awarding to them.
Thank you very much. This is pretty straightforward, and we get going on it right now, I presume, Works Manager?
We'll work with the contractor for a schedule. The work has to be completed by February 7th in order to meet the grant deadline.
Okay, coming up quickly. Good. Councillors, any questions before I call a motion? Is the time, please? They're being done. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes, or holding your hand up. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Good, carried. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
That's somewhat related. We're walking the dog today just by Centennial Trail near the north end of the concrete sound wall. I noticed there's a whole pile of tree trimmings have been dropped there, and I'm just wondering, has somebody got a contract to thin the stuff there? It was pretty sloppy, so I'm just concerned about foliage on the ground left in spring or anything.
No, if you could send me an email, Councillor Bain, I'll have staff look into it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Next item is the garbage recycling and organics collection and hauling contract for 2022. The motion is that council authorize the mayor and CEO to execute a one-year extension to the existing solid waste collection agreement with Waste Control Services dated for reference April 1st, 2021. The report is here before us. I will ask for a second to make a quick editorial. Can I have a hand, please? Thank you. Seems like a lot of balls in the air here. I like where the staff is going with this. That's my comment, so I would be in favor of this, but I'm seeking questions for staff from council.
Unless you have any questions on the report, but I do have a bit of a comment on the BareSmart bin issue. So the BareSmart team has obviously discussed these ideas of having bear resistant bins back and forward, done some research. I know the workshop manager has done some research of his own, come to similar conclusions, battling to find a small bin that meets any sort of BareSmart criteria or sort of bear resistant criteria. And so, but you know, I mean, I think everyone understands if we can find a small one that could be used for green waste and it does improve. The resist or does hamper bears getting into it. It is a good, it's a good deterrent, and we should definitely do so. However, I don't know that it should. Other reasons to extend this contract, and not just that. I know there are others, but that wouldn't be one of the prime reasons for me. I think we're fairly close to moving past that. The other thing that's come to light in conversations with other communities like the North Shore Black Bear Society, etc., people get these bear-resistant bins, and some are getting in their minds that they're bear-proof bins, and that it leads to an increase in the number of people that leave their garbage outside, and it creates a bigger problem than it actually prevents. And we even had some emails from Lions Bay residents. No, I bought those bins in the village, had them 8 years ago, whatever it was, and no, definitely bear-proof. Watch the bear, can't get into it. So it's creating more of an attractant in some cases because of that misuse. So for all those reasons, I don't know where we're going to go with bear-proof bins in the end, but we're not seeing bear-proof or bear-resistant bins as a key strategy at the moment from the BareSmart team. There's other places that we're going to be more likely to be focusing.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. I will just add that Squamish is very successful in 3 sizes of BareSmart bins. So they are out there and they can be successful. Yes, people tend to store them outside more frequently, and that would have to be something that would be addressed through education and possibly bylaw infractions.
I think if this request is still part of the future contract negotiations, that's fine. But I don't know that it's going to be a deciding factor, as much of a deciding factor as we thought it was when we started out discussing this 6 to 9 months ago.
Fair enough.
Anybody else, any comments, councillors?
Just, yeah, a quick question for Nye. If I see that, you know, perhaps the Climate Action Committee can add some support here, maybe with education around the contamination in the recycling. With Recycle BC, I know we had a discussion about a mini transfer station here on site. Is there some way that we can help as a Climate Action Committee expedite that process? Or if there's any support that we can offer, would you please let me know, and we'll present it to the committee at the next meeting.
Absolutely. That is one of the considerations for the RFP, that a waste hauler would have to provide us with that extra service of collecting the additional materials that we require collected.
And I'm just thinking perhaps I did speak with George at,
Waste control.
Yeah, at Waste Control, and he said there was a woman that worked with them that would come out and do an audit of our recycling bins and would provide some education for the school. So we could liaise with maybe an education day with the kids, and then they can go home and tell their parents how they should properly behave. I think that's a good start point. So please let us know how we can support that and move forward.
Will do.
Thank you, Nye.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, sorry if I'm missing something here. Do I understand correctly that everybody has to transition to Recycle BC now? Is that what the issue is?
No. Recycle BC is a service that's offered to municipalities that want to engage, and they will pay for the recycling process. They essentially purchase our recyclings back from us at a pretty substantial cost.
Oh, okay. So this is being voluntary on our part then, I guess, is it?
It's in our favor. We will save significant dollars towards the overall waste collection.
Oh, okay, thanks. One last thing. I've read this thing over a couple of times, and on page 115, and there's a reference to the contractor maintaining broken carts, and then we're talking about bear-resistant containers, and then another place they're bins, and somewhere else they're garbage cans. Are we all talking about the same device for all those different words, or are they splitting things up somehow?
Yeah, so one of the things we're talking about is the contractor providing uniform garbage containers to all residents in different sizes. And how would that contractor handle broken containers, damaged? Let's say a wheel fell off or the handle broke. How do you work that into the contract so that they would come out and repair it within a certain time frame?
Oh, okay.
So whether it's a bear resistant bin or an actual garbage container that they provide, if they get damaged, how do they repair it?
Oh, okay. So that explains the sort of vagueness of at this point, that we'll have it sorted out eventually. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillors, I think it's a pretty good deal. We've got the year to work on it with different groups within the village too. Any more questions? Otherwise, I'll call a motion. There being none, I will call a motion. Please confirm approval of the motion on the floor by advising yes, holding your hand up. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much, councillors. And thank you very much to staff. Very creative bunch of things happening there. Next item, Lions Bay Beach Park revitalization. And the motion is that council acknowledge the project scope as refined through the public consultation process undertaken for this project, submitted to and approved by senior levels of government for funding. And secondly, the council direct the CAO to retain a project manager for the Lions Bay Beach Park project and other current projects, such as the CLAT retrofit project and the Lions Bay Avenue Connector project, to ensure the timely and effective management of these projects in accordance with project goals and objectives and municipal procurement policies. And 3, that consideration of the budget for the management of the foregoing projects and any other suitable project work be referred to the strategic planning session November 30th and December 1st, 2021. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a hand or a yes for a second, please? Thank you. CAO, you want to walk us through this? Or it's actually Mr. Jaffer and the CFO.
Well, I can do an intro, and then if the CFO or CAO have more to add, I'll leave it to them. Essentially, what we're talking about is a very large, complex, multifaceted project that requires extensive management to keep it on target and to help eliminate scope creep. Budgets were prepared pre-pandemic, so 2017. And we all know that things have substantially increased. So there's concerns with the increased costs of things in the current COVID-related climate. The project essentially consists of revitalization of the entire park. So we're talking about the playgrounds, the washroom structure, the septic field, the Beck gazebo, the swings, the kayak rack, and the kayak launch. So it is a pretty onerous and substantial project that will require loads of staff time. Writing the RFP in itself will be a complex process, and we'll need to specify detailed requirements for things like the washrooms, how many fixtures, what kind of fixtures, what kind of surfacing, what kind of floor material for ease of cleaning, etc. You know, what kind of playgrounds, what kind of kayak rack, what does that look like? So there's a lot of work that's entailed in this project. And scheduling is also going to be complicated, as typically construction windows are designed to coincide with good weather when the park's being used the most. So I'll leave it at that and let the CAO add if he has anything else to add.
Probably want this additional thought.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot that. The design drawing or the drawing in the council package is the incorrect drawing. The correct drawing, which was amended after receiving public feedback, is what was sent to council just before the meeting. And I believe Carla has it so that she can put it on screen for us. So this is the modified version after we received the feedback, after the Lions Bay Beach Park Advisory Committee received the feedback.
Can you see it, Lauren?
I can see it now, yeah. So I can point out the differences. The kayak racks were removed from the marina side of the fence, the hedge, and they were put back in their existing spot. The playgrounds were basically left in their existing places. A smaller tot lot playground area would be added in a pathway near the marina fence. And then the washroom facility, and then a covered picnic area, seated area.
Carla, could you scroll down so you can see 1 and 2? The other one? Thank you.
A little more.
So one is the accessible pathway. Part of the grant requires that this be a wheelchair or a disabled accessible facility.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Before we go off the picture, just spotted something. So now, number 7 is not wheelchair accessible then, right? Doesn't have to be, it's just the beach, because it's got stairs on either side of it.
Yeah, so number 7, 6 and 7, the kayak rack and the swings will not be accessible. Same with the Laurie Beck Pavilion at the bottom. The pathway to the right that goes around, so that the upper picnic area or the covered picnic area will be accessible. The washrooms will be accessible. The tot playground on the right-hand side will also be accessible. and the beach will be accessible. You need to go around the park to get to those facilities.
Can I clarify the request on the table? I'm understanding it has more to do with project management than it does with discussing the design. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, so the design was developed by the Lions Bay Beach Park Advisory Committee that was set up in 2017, 2018. Committee that was comprised of residents and the mayor. There were several meetings. They went out for public feedback. This is what their final design or the final sketch was. And this is the sketch and the drawing that was provided to the federal government for the grant. So this is what we're expected to provide.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jaffer. As you mentioned, I chaired that committee, and I'm glad that we won the grant. The two things from then to now, and I'll ask for your thoughts and flexibility on this and for council to consider. One is the kayak racks, which are back to the original place, which is fine, but they're underneath trees, which release all the goo that trees do. So I'm not sure, this is kind of a concept drawing. So I'm wondering, and I'm hoping that there might be some form of cover over the kayak racks, but I'll leave that with you to think about, or how this goes, I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, what we're thinking about doing is putting out a design build RFP where we would specify the minimum requirements. So for the kayak racks, it would be a covered structure with a minimum of 100, the ability to have 100 boats or kayaks, and then see what the designer would come back with.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question, and is the basketball court area, or the half court, or whatever the technical term is. And, you know, without thinking too far, there's the committee put it forward. It does have a recreational value. It's also a nice grassy area where you can put other tents and things like that in need. But then the issue then is that the blacktop area covers grass, and maybe that's not what the community wants to do now. I'm going to confuse Councilor.
So one,
it's the order in which we're discussing things. Sorry, it's just it's inconsistent with what's on the agenda, and I understand that all of this factors into this project, but we have two separate requests in front of us, and I feel like we're getting them mixed up. And if I've mixed them up, I'm going to apologize right now. But I understand we have two separate requests for decision in front of us. So am I missing something here?
You know,
Because one of them relates to project management, the other relates to the aesthetic. And so I just feel like we're having one conversation too early. And I'm happy to be wrong, but my understanding was we were talking about project management in this request.
Well, I think if I may, there's two aspects to the recommendation. The first is that council is here to, this is an opportunity to review what the scope of the project is as refined through the public consultation processes and submitted to and approved by the senior levels of government. So it is an opportunity for council members to have a look at this and ask any questions about it, or point out any things that, you might want staff to consider as we move forward. So there's that aspect to it. And I think that's probably in the vein of the comments that the mayor has just made. The other aspect is, as you pointed out, how do we best manage the process in a way that will be efficient and will ensure the best outcomes in terms of procurement and staying on budget and so forth. So yeah, there are two different concepts, but I don't know that we're sort of confined to one at the moment, and we're kind of going back and forth between the two, it seems.
okay, I thank you very much, Theo. I was still on the first part, which was sparked by the graphic. So I'll conclude on this piece because I've done my part about the kayak racks. And so, and I understand that the government wants a project to complete as envisaged. So my question, Public Works Manager, is that if there's consideration to minimize that half court or delete it, is that one of the things or not really?
We would have to look into that. One of the reasons the court was installed, or the hard surface, let's call it that, was that during events, special events, when they're held on the top grass area, it destroys the grass because the number of people setting up a stage, setting up a band area. So having a stage, a paved area where the stage could be set is one of the considerations that the committee had.
And that's an outstanding answer, and thank you for refreshing my memory on that.
I think that, sorry, just to anticipate what it is that you're getting at, Mayor McLaughlin, I know that there was some concerns about noise and, you know, bouncing of basketballs and things like that. We could certainly look at alternative uses that wouldn't produce noise, such as, you know, maybe it's a shuffleboard thing, or maybe it's just a hopscotch design on the pavement that kids can, you know, toss around and hop here and there. But I think it's important to have that surface so that we have the ability to have events. And, you know, I think the idea was also to have a power supply there and that kind of thing. So
I agree. Thank you very much. So relative to me and Councillor Barmeyer, trust me, I'm the one that appreciates order the most. So thank you very much. That concludes my questions on the first part, which covers the scope. Which, if there are no further questions, we'll go to item 2.
Yeah, my scope related questions were the same thing about the hard surface. I recall that being one of the things that was seemed to draw negative responses in the survey, and raised this before. So yeah, I think maybe a further thought on that is definitely warranted. But the rest of my questions are cleared up with the revised site plan. I was looking at the other one. But,
thank you very much.
Thanks for that. I've got some comments on the management, but I'll leave that for when we get to that. That's what
so Works Manager, then this is going to come back to us one more time for the final kind of thing, or is it just going forward?
No, it has to come back to council.
Good, thanks very much. Councillor Barmeyer, I see your hands up, but CFO has one
I just
point.
wanted to clarify one thing on the top of page 122 and the bottom, I guess, starting on page 121. We did clarify, because there'd been quite a long decision-making process with this, our ability to tweak what we committed to. And there's this definition that's outlined in the report that has been approved, and that's what we're committed to. So it does give us some flexibility. They call it a multi-purpose hard surface.
Okay.
So that's what we're committed to. We may have previously said it was going to be basketball, but we're just committed to a multi-purpose hard surface. So there's flexibility in size and purpose. So we were pleased to find that out because we are locked into what we've asked for. We really can't change it, but we have some fairly generous definitions here.
Thank you very much, CFO. Councillor Barmeyer, back to you. You had your hand up. Otherwise, if you're good, we'll go to the next point.
Yeah, sorry, I was just focused on the next point. I wasn't, I thought,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're in the sweet, okay, here's your warning. We're in the sweet spot now. Okay, so let's open it up. So I think we've covered the first one. So the second one, pretty clear, councillors. This is Councillor Barmeyer, your chop. Actually, because it doesn't speak so much, we'll go to Councillor Bing first, and then to Councillor Barmeyer.
One question I have about the project management, with all the other things involved as well, is there any envisioning of the project manager running the projects concurrently? For example, the Plat and the Lions Bay Avenue connector and the Beach Park thing to save costs and, more importantly, to get everything done on a reasonable time. Is this in your plans?
I won't speak for the CAO, but that was our intent. There's going to be multiple projects running at the same time.
Good, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmeyer, had sweet bloods there. Let's go.
Yeah, I just had two comments or questions. I guess I wanted to understand if, and I assume the answer is yes, but if the project management is actually covered, the cost of the project management is covered by the grant?
A portion of it will be, yes.
And whether that includes furnishing the RFP, if that's also part of that scope. And I guess it was more of a qualitative question, is sort of the level of detail that we're comfortable with putting an RFP out, and if the committee has any role in setting what I would call qualitative specifications. So the intent versus detailed specifications, which can cost us a boatload to generate. And I just wondered what project delivery approach we were taking, whether we were going to sort of make the GC responsible to meet all applicable codes, and whether we were looking at doing a design build, and you had touched on that design build approach. So I just wanted to understand sort of the value proposition there, and how much detail we were going to provide, and
so originally for the biggest portion of the project would be the washroom facility. We had originally budgeted for an architect to prepare drawings for that. However, again, because of the pre-COVID cost that we put to this project, and the concern that prices have gone up, our thoughts have changed, and a design build would probably be a more efficient way to go about it. That said, there are still details that need to be ironed out.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you know, what surfacing on the walls, on the floors, what kind of fixtures, stainless steel, or so there's still quite a bit of detail, but those specifications would form the backbone of the design build. So it's not as onerous on the project manager, but there's still quite a bit to be done.
the only other question I had is, I'm assuming this is a publicly posted position, or is that something we would roll into the RFP for the GC, that project management role?
I'm assuming it would be a publicly posted position. Yeah.
Separate from letting the contract for the actual work.
Separate from letting the contract, the project manager would develop the contract and the specifications for these structures.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very exciting. Councilors, any more questions on this? Let's focus on item number 2. Councilor Abbott?
A few.
Yep.
Okay, next.
It's your floor, Councilor Abbott.
So first of all, I like the design build concept. I always have. Many years ago, when for a short part of my career, I did do a little bit of kind of municipal type work as a building contractor. In Edmonton, they had a very interesting system in those days where they would scope out the must-haves, and then they would list the nice-to-haves, and they would actually set the budget. And so the trick to win work in Edmonton was to squeeze, if you didn't have all the must-haves, obviously your bid wasn't accepted, but the trick was to squeeze in as many nice-to-haves as you could in order to sort of sweeten the pot. It wasn't to get the low number. But what it actually did was, as long as you set the budget accurately, it kept everyone below budget, and sometimes caused them to promise you additional things. So you might want to consider that. It was a very interesting process, and I bid a few projects that way. On the project further on the design build, when I read this the first time, I was assuming there was more than one contract, because you spoke about, you know, design build for the kayak rack, a design build for the washrooms, and I'm not sure how the rest of it was coming together. Norm was talking about a GC. So which is it? Do we have one GC?
I think it depends highly upon the qualifications of the person that we're able to engage. Preferably, a single GC doing all of the work would be ideal. However, if we're not able to comfortably do that, then it will probably be 2, maybe 3 different design builds. So the key to which way we go depends strictly on the qualifications of the project manager and what they're capable of.
Managing one GC is very different to managing multiple
Understood. Yeah.
number of contractors. My other question around the project manager is, you said we can get this back through the grant. Are you saying we can get this back through the grants on the same ratios we have for the rest of the work? Or you said a portion of it could be could come from the grant?
A portion of the grant was set aside for project management engineering type work. So it's at the same dollar amount as the grant.
So okay, so we still already have it in the budget. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And likewise for the retrofit project, right? Which was 100% grant.
Yeah,
I don't believe there's any funding set aside in that grant for project management.
no, just more or less reliance upon the general contractor and oversight by architect, engineer, and fire chief in his capacity and experience, and myself.
So if we extended the project manager's functions to include the clat building and the connector, that would be, we would be paying for that. It'd be unbudgeted at this stage, correct?
We're going to have to look for where we can source out the other sources for budget for the project manager and come back to council at the strategic planning session with respect to ideas in terms of how we flesh out that budget and where we can pull that money from. There may be some availability through the Lions Bay Avenue Connector project, but not so much so for the CLAT because of the tightness of that budget.
Yeah, so we'll need to calculate how much we can attribute towards the beach park and the connector and come back to council at the strategic planning session with some sort of plan.
Okay, so I'm suggesting we're not in a position to make a decision tonight then.
No, but more or less, confirming or supporting the direction that we're going.
The recommendation reads, the council direct the CEO to retain a project manager.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah, I guess that's there because we're anxious about getting going. Preferably, that's what we would do, is move forward with this. But if you're not there yet, then we can have further discussion about it at the strategic planning session.
I have a different view than Councillor Abbott. I think we should proceed because over the next 11 or 12 days before the strategy session, when you hammered out the numbers, I think those 10 that week is important to you to start getting your work out. And I'd rather you did it now versus waiting until after the 1st.
I disagree. I think we should see the numbers before we make a decision.
Essentially, our thinking was that this is between the CLAT, this project, and the connector. It's beyond the scope of our ability to perform this. Given speaking for myself, given the core work that I've got to get done next year, and there's some significant milestone projects that have to be completed on the water side and the sewer side I'm going to be run thin, and my ability to manage a project is going to be fairly minimal. So yes, you're right. One way or another, we're going to have to pay for this. We do have funds that we can draw from the beach park grant, and we may have funds from the connector project, but the balance is going to come from budgeting.
There you go. Councillor Abbott, I'm going to hold you for a minute. Councillor Parmere?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we can move this with a friendly amendment, because hiring someone takes time, putting out an ad, interviewing, and I'm wondering if this can run in parallel, and we can discuss the budget and then confirm the hire at that time. Yeah, that would be my comment here.
Great suggestion.
Good. Councillor, if all the councillors could look at the second part of the motion. So we could amend it with one word. I think the council directed CAO to pursue a project manager, yada, yada, yada. And that word change doesn't as significant than retain. And then by that time, we're back to the budget in another 11 or 12 days. Would that work for everybody? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It works with the CAO. Councillor Abbott, I like your thumb up.
Yeah, just pursue, you mean beginning investigate or?
For lack of,
Put out an ad, see what comes back.
Yeah, so it's, you investigate some preliminary work to.
Yeah. So pursue covers it. So there we go. So let's Carla, friendly amendment on that one. Thank you. Don't need a motion for that, do I? No, good. Thank you. I think we've hammered that. If we're good on that one, I think we've got with the project piece. We've given a soft marching orders to the staff team, and we're going to see the budget, which is item number 3. Last time for questions would be now, and I'll call a motion.
Can I just have one last question? Just go back to the first one as I'm reading it again now. So now you said this is going to come back to us prior to it gets approved by, forwarded or submitted and approved by senior levels of government for grant funding. Do we need another amendment in that statement?
So my thinking was that once we hire the project manager and develop the detailed lists, that would come back to council. So the specifications for the bathroom, the type of playground equipment, the number of kayak racks, etc.
Yeah, so this concept sketch that you showed us earlier is going to get submitted now, as is.
No, that's already approved.
It's already been submitted.
Done.
But for example, is the kayak rack made of wood? Is it made of steel? Is it made of aluminum? Those details have to be ironed out.
Oh, sorry, I'm misreading. I got the grammar. I'm misreading this. Okay, you're referring to what was submitted. You're not submitting something else. I thought we were submitting
correct.
something new.
No.
Okay, sorry.
No.
All right, move on. Okay.
Thank you very much. 2 things. Firstly, that concluded. I think we've got this. Thank you, staff. Great recommendation. I will call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes or holding your hand up. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. A little louder out there. Thank you. Good, Carrie. We'll pause for a second. It's 10 o'clock now. I have a motion to extend the meeting. Oh, wrong clock. Sorry. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong clock.
Let's save time.
My $20 is looking a lot better right now. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So that takes care of that, and we are on to the next item, which is the Village of Lions Bay housing needs. I'm going to pause here now that I found an extra hour. We've still got a lot of stuff to work on tonight. My recommendation is that we table this. We've already had a half-an-hour presentation. It's pretty straightforward. I think there's other stuff in priority here this evening that we should deal with. But see, I was looking at me like Bambi in the headlights.
My concern would be that it would be good to have an idea as to the kinds of questions or thoughts that council has, without necessarily arriving at any conclusions, but I'd certainly like to know what sort of thoughts council has, or what feedback you have, or, you know, to give the planners, for instance, an idea as to whether, you know, they're going to be asked to tweak the report or to come back and answer questions or what have you. I'd just like to get some sort of an idea as to what does that look like.
Okay, I'll turn on my bill. Thank you very much.
Can
So,
we bring this back to the planning session? Is it
strategy session?
an urgent? Like, is it that urgent?
Strategy session?
I would be in favor of strategy session. It gives more chance to actually absorb and go over all of it.
Okay, CAO says fine. I presume everybody else is too, since I put the motion forward. Councillor Palmer, that's a yes or a hand up?
Oh, it's a hand up, mainly just to talk about, you know, meeting cadence. We brought it, I think I brought it up in the past. You know, an information report presented at a meeting doesn't necessarily need to be discussed in the meeting that it was presented. I think it's fair to allow council some time to digest and think about it. And I agree with Councillor Cunliffe. I don't see the haste here, so I'd be happy to just receive it as an information report and bring it back at the strategy session.
Okay, so what my proposal is, we were going to table this, and if it comes back in the strategy session, will ultimately coming back probably at the next council meeting. Councillor Abbott, are you good with that? Yep. Councillor Bain?
Yep.
Good. And I think we've got it covered. Okay, so we'll push it off. Thank you. Next item, mayor's report, none. Councillor Abbott, your secondary suite initiative. And I'll give you the floor as I fumble through and try and find page 215.
I'm trying to get page 215. Yeah, okay, I've got there. So I guess this is a follow-up. Well, no, I guess it is a follow-up from a previous request for direction. Myself and the CFO have discussed the financial implications of this, and I think the council are aware of what the impact could be, and council is aware that we don't actually know how many of these secondary suites are currently rented by the Lions Bay Fire Rescue guys, and it could be as many as 80% of them, or very few. We don't actually know. We don't actually have any visibility on that, because while we know virtually all the fire rescue guys are renters, we don't actually know exactly what they're renting or whether it's a registered suite. The request for direction was written that I thought it was going to be a fairly simple question. We're going to come and ask you to direct staff to take the necessary actions to waive the secondary suites and for the Lions Bay Fire Rescue. There was a second option. We direct staff to expand the secondary suite initiative to include other resident volunteers or service providers. We discussed that previously, and there was some hesitancy on that. And then there's this number 3 was other direction as people could recommend. Subsequently, since writing this report and up until just before the meeting, I am wondering whether we should take this away and consider a more broad-reaching approach to secondary suites, and suggesting that we include the option to waive fees completely. And the reason I say that is not only for the fire and rescue guys, we seem to have a feeling among some, or maybe many on council, that secondary suites provides a service around housing that we want to encourage. One way of encouraging it would certainly be by taking away the obstacle of a fee and the additional fee. It also might encourage more people registering their suites. But then the question is, why would you register if you're not getting a fee? And I would say you'd still want to do that in order to keep the standards and the safety standards up. So I would like to hear from everyone else what they think. Should we keep this down to the narrow focus of the fire rescue? Go ahead with this, or is it a bigger discussion that we consider for all suites? And I am well aware that when secondary suites were first put in place, there was a fairly large voice among residents that they only wanted to approve that initiative if the costs were covered in some way. Hence why we have this additional fee for people that have suites. So that I think that conversation does need to be, if we go that path, does need to be a wider conversation. So I'll just stop talking at that point and go around the table.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Just a quick question before I come back to the point. So CFO, when do these utility things go out? December?
February.
February. Okay, so there's lots of time. Councillor Abbott, I'm in support of your action, but I think that perhaps maybe not a decision tonight, but I would push it off to the strategy session as I think a fairly short topic actually there. It's been a while since I looked at the original secondary suite reports that these committees did way back when, but my recollection was, and this was Mayor Broughton's term before the one that I served under her, and some of the council members referred to these people that weren't paying anything as freeloaders, and I think that has kind of changed in a lot of ways now. So I'm supportive of where you're going, but I think I'd like to refresh myself with the information that got us to this stage and ask what the financial impact is. And if that can be done at the strategy session, and then we go to a motion afterwards at the following council meeting, that'd work for me. Would that work for you?
Yes, well, I wouldn't mind just hearing kind of thoughts of others if that's where we're going with this.
No, Councillor Vermeer?
Yeah, I think we do have to have a more fulsome discussion around how to promote secondary suites, and in light of the report we saw today, reducing hurdles is I think one way to go about it, but I wonder if we're missing a key thing here. And again, I keep reiterating utilities, and it's not so much on the water supply side for secondary suites, but it's the ability of an existing septic system to handle an additional dwelling unit, so to speak, and the cost implications that could have for an existing homeowner. It's not something we can lose sight of, and it's something we need to understand and understand the cost implications of that. And I don't know if there's an opportunity to offer any kind of financial incentive from the province, for example, to address that issue. But that is a real legal element, and a real there's an addition that's outside of our jurisdiction, that compliance with septic sizing, but it's a real factor, and it will affect our ability to develop secondary suites within existing homes. So I think it's a more fulsome discussion that we have to have if we're truly wanting to reduce the hurdle for secondary suites.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vermeer. I'm going to go to Councillor Cunliffe and then Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I think this needs a more fulsome discussion as well. If we're going to open Pandora's box and we become aware of secondary suites that maybe aren't registered and then aren't compliant, and now we're sending a building inspector in there, and then now we need to enforce that these upgrades are going to be made, it seems like a much more robust discussion needs to be had. So I support, yeah.
Thank you.
strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, just listening to the conversation, I think that I agree. It does take more conversation, and so as everybody's talking, it just occurs to me that it would be good if we could increase registration somehow or other, whatever that would take. And I'm just thinking I'd like to talk to the fire chief and just find out the capabilities of their computer-aided dispatch, because they would be very interested to know if there's a second suite in a building they're going to, and have that ahead of time. So it's a safety issue as well. How we get people to register, well, that might take a bit of a conversation, but I'm happy to defer it to.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the CAO, and after his comments, Councillor Abbott, I'll let you conclude and go with the recommendation. CAO.
I was just going to suggest that, this is a topic that probably bears putting out to the general public and asking them their opinions about how they feel about removing the utility fee from secondary suites and altogether, and get some feedback from those, and maybe even in that piece, bring up some of the issues that, for example, Councillor Barmeyer touched on, and get some feedback from the public as to their thoughts about waiving utility fees. If you're going to have a discussion,
This would be a staff-led initiative.
be a survey of sorts to put out, I guess.
Okay, so
Sorry, just on that point, Peter, is a survey of sorts necessary? If it's coming to the strategy session, we always put out some information, invite commentary in the strategy session. We could highlight the key topics. This might be one of them, and we can get it that way without doing it independently.
So are you saying have your say and get people's feedback?
no,
No, I'm saying when we have the strategy session, we always invite people's comments or feedback on the documentation. We could highlight this is one of the areas we'd like people to give us feedback because it's going to be discussed in the strategy session, rather than having it as a separate standalone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think though that it would be, you may get a few people who have something to say about it, but you're going to get a lot more people if you have a format for them to respond to. But maybe we can give some thought to what does that look like in terms of how they provide that feedback.
okay.
The other issue is going to be around timing. We're finalizing utility budgets in January. We do 3 readings by early February. I'm not sure there's time if you're thinking of waiving the fees to do it this year. I mean, it's a pretty big scope project. There was a whole committee on this before. I think definitely discussed it at the strategic session, but the decision would have to be made in January if we were going to waive, because it would have budget implications if there was no fee. So it's kind of come out of left field for me, but suddenly talking about waiving fees. To me, this is something you discussed with strategic planning with the intention of looking into it in 2022. It's a lot of money to have to make up. But aside from that, I do strongly feel from just the feedback I've got from before, you would want public input on this.
Okay. Okay, back to you, Councillor Abbott. Then I think we're going back to the strategy session. So I think that this should be one of the topics, and we'll morph out of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sia, we're going to publish the dates, the topics, the times that they're being covered for public access. So
yeah,
this might be one. We might catch a few people, but I agree. The wider scope is to send it out broad, and CFO's given us some timelines for this. So I think, Councillor Abbott, it's your call. It's your motion, but if you want to bring this, I think you've got lots of feedback from your colleagues and they're interested in the topic, and the strategy session may be the best place for it.
I think we need to, given the doubt that was raised as to how many of these suites, and we really have no idea, are currently occupied by people in Linesburg Fire and Rescue. I don't know how we go ahead with this recommendation unless we look at it with a wider lens. or B, get a better feel for that. So I think, yeah, we have to postpone it to the strategy session, I guess.
Okay, that's your recommendation then, so we'll, that is your recommendation. You good? Thank you very much. Next piece, and there's 3 of them from Trees, Views and Landscape Committee versus on their stuff that they did last week. I'll go to the first one, which is tree cutting application number 115, which is 340 Ocean View Road. And I'll just do part of this staff recommendation, and which is the committee's recommendation that a Trees, Views and Landscape Committee recommends to council that council approves tree cutting permit application number 115, subject to the following, and I'm not going to read it all, but you can see from your agenda or in the package. So that'll be with subsection A, B, C, and indents 1, 2, 3, and 4, which ends any other municipal bylaw requirements. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a second, please? Good. Any questions, any comments on this particular application? Here, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'm trying to remember which one I had my question on. Just bear with me. Yeah, no, this is 340 Ocean View Road. Okay, no, sorry, I remember this one. This is the one where we had previously. We did give them an encroachment permit.
Yes, he's going to put his driveway over this. He's going to smoke out the trees above his ditch line.
My only thoughts on that is, if we said no now, we're already given an encroachment permit, we're going to be in trouble. I would really hope these came in at the same time. But anyway, I'm okay with it.
Good, thanks. Call the motion. All in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, carried. Next one, which is tree cutting application 114, which is at 345 Bayview. That the Trees, Views and Landscape Committee recommends to council that council approves tree cutting permit application number 114, subject to the following, and again, it's identical. Subsections A, B, and C, indents 1, 2, 3, and 4, ending with any other municipal bylaw requirements. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion on this one?
I just have one question on this one. We haven't been able to contact the immediately impacted neighbour across the street, which is the most immediately impacted neighbour. From what I understand through what I'm seeing here, there was an attempt to contact him and he was sent a letter. I just wouldn't mind hearing Peter or someone else's comments on what that means. We've done all the due diligence we need to and we can. Is it just an owner that doesn't seem to want to participate, or is there something else that should be getting done there?
I'm not able to shed any more information on this. Just one answer.
So this is the one, I mean, directly across the road is a neighbour, and those are the trees. Half the work is across the road on the neighbour's property. And then it says in this report that that particular neighbour has not responded, but he was sent a letter, no response from the owner.
Having been to the site, all I can shed more light on, Councillor Abbott, is that these trees were trimmed previously and they're going to be trimmed back where they were.
Okay, I guess no one can answer the question then.
As to why
I'm hesitating because I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the owner is out of country and does not live there actively. They rent. And I believe that the applicant has tried numerous ways to try and contact him. But Shauna is the person that has most information on that.
Councillor Abbott, you're going to let this go?
Yeah, staff feel they've done the due diligence, that's
Thank
fine.
you, Connor. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It's unfortunate, it really is, but it is what it is. Thank you. I will call a motion. All those in favor of the approval, please confirm by saying yes or raise your hand. Those opposed say no.
Yes.
You carried. Last one. And this is tree cutting application number 116 at 445 Timber Top Drive. And the recommendation is whereas the Trees Views and Landscape Committee considers that the proposed work and tree cutting permit application number 116 is in accordance with the management plan described in Council Resolution 8DI dated May 16, 2017. That the Trees Views and Landscape Committee recommends to Council that Council approves tree cutting permit application number 116, subject to the following as I did previously. This is subsection A, subsection B, subsection C, indents 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 being any other municipal bylaw requirements, and a final addendum that the Trees Views and Landscape Committee recommends to Council that Council approves a full refund of the application fee to the applicant. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion, any comment? I'll start with a comment. In 2017, this is something I was involved in. I can tell you that it was somewhat contentious between the neighbors and the management plan was approved. It's been put in place. It's been monitored. The place looks very nice. This is just an upkeep cut. And on waiving the fee, the committee believed that this is an ongoing thing, and it's not the intention really to have the applicant go through all the motions of a first-time tree cut. Any other questions? Any other comments for staff?
My question would be, that, or comment would be that all the same processes mostly. We kind of tried to streamline this as much as possible for the applicant. But, there's still the staff time involved for front desk staff, for Carla to put it on the agenda, for myself to review it, particularly going back, seeing what it was that they were supposed to do, figuring out what kind of a process was appropriate this time around. Public Works to double check it. So all of those costs that go into that very minimal fee of $75 are, we're probably over on every one of these applications in terms of staff time. So we're probably not recovering our costs. So my comment would be, I don't necessarily agree with the recommendation to waive the fee. And probably we should be looking at whether or not the fee is appropriate or needs to be raised for all tree applications. But that's something for another day.
And on that other day, I've arranged a meeting with the CAO and myself and the tree committee for next week, I believe. And I'm sure this will be one of the topics. To my colleagues, any questions on this particular application or the recommendation? Councillor Farmer, you're happy or you got a question?
Well, I had the same, the first question that came to my mind is why would we refund an application fee when that's part of our bylaw? So I struggle with that.
Councillor Barmeyer wants to put a friendly amendment that we approve the permit without the refunding the fee. I will second it.
Okay, that would be my recommendation and my friendly amendment that we stand behind our fees bylaw.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment. Councillor Bain, Councillor Phillip, any further comments or I'll call the motion?
I concur with what's just been said.
I concur as well.
Good. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes or raise
Yes.
your hand. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Good. Thank you, carried. Thank you very much. And the next item is, sorry for my flipping, item D2, which is the CAC update. Councillor Barmeyer, you have the floor.
Yeah, it's brief. The last Climate Action Committee didn't have any recommendations for this particular council meeting. We're meeting again on the 22nd at the recommendation of the mayor to pull together and prioritize initiatives, climate action initiatives, and attach budget to them to take to the strategy session. So that's all I have for an update from the Climate Action Committee, unless Councillor Cunliffe has anything to add.
No, I think I'm okay, but thank you, Norm.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. I look forward to that meeting next week. Other councillors, any questions for the co-chairs? Nope. Thank you very much. Next item is the 2 reports from emergency services, and it'll be the September-October RCMP report, which is before us, and it'll be to receive the report. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. I have no questions. Anybody else got anything with? I don't think we're CAO and I aren't seeing the RCMP for another 7 weeks. So I don't have anything more to add. I'll call the motion for receipt. Please confirm by saying yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. Next one is the Lions Bay Surrey Regional Fire Dispatch Monthly Report for LB Fire Rescue. It's pretty straightforward. I'll put that one forward for information and for receipt. A second, please. So yes, thank you. Any questions? Thank you. I'll call a motion. I'll presume everybody's happy with that, and that it's a yes.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Next one, resolutions. And this is preschool parent group, and this is Cider with Santa. And the motion is that council grant use of the Lions Bay Beach parking lot to the preschool parent group on Sunday, December 12th from 11 to 5 for the purposes of a fundraising event entitled Cider with Santa, subject to the applicant obtaining all necessary permit insurance, and the council grants an exemption to the noise bylaw to allow for amplified sound for the Cider with Santa event. I'll put that forward. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. And anything to add from staff that received this? No? Okay, let's hope for a sunny, cool, not cold, not rainy day for preschool types. No questions? I will call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes or raising your hand. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Thank you. Carried. Next one. This is entitled Have Your Say. Councillor Abbott, get warmed up while I have a quick look at your okay. I don't want to trip over myself here. Carla, could you read the motion, please? I'm tripping through the emails here.
That council directs Councillor Abbott to engage with Metro Vancouver staff to confirm the follow-up actions to be taken as a result from the public feedback obtained through the Urban Containment Boundary Have Your Say feedback survey that was held in November 2021.
Is that captured for you, Councillor Abbott?
Sounds good.
I would suggest that there also be wording in there that reflects that the CAO and the mayor be copied on all such correspondence.
Fine with that,
Absolutely.
Councillor Abbott?
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. And as we go with this, I've already spoken to you before. Anything I can do to help Councillor Abbott, please ask. Okay. I will second the motion as amended. Any discussion, any questions for Councillor Abbott? What does that look like? What's the time anticipation?
I'd maybe just explain a little context. It's partly timing, unfortunate due to some logistics, we weren't able to give residents an understanding of the outcome of the have your say. And I'm going to be a little presumptuous and assume that we have additional work to do. I don't want that to drag on to the next council meeting because it's a ways off. So I'm just looking for some approval from council for me to continue the dialogue with Metro and Heather McNeil in particular, so that at least all the process issues are taken care of in the interim.
Thank you very much. Well said. Councillors, any questions for our colleague?
Do you need permission to talk to Metro? Do you need council's permission?
I'm asking your permission to talk to Metro on behalf of all of us.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay, I was just curious.
Like the email I shared earlier today,
Well,
that conversation.
To be fair, Councillor Barnmeier, I do it every day. So I appreciate Councillor Abbott getting the formality of it and the intensity of what he's trying to do. So basically, he's giving us all a level playing field.
Well, as well, normally this is something that would be handled staff to staff, but I'm happy to have Councillor Abbott deal directly as long as I'm kept in the loop.
Me too. There you go. Thank you very much. I think, and for me, Councillor Abbott's got a strong endorsement from me and our colleagues and staff. We wish him well and success. I call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and thank you, Neville.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Abbott, for continuing to do the heavy lifting on this. And I'm sure that Messrs. Reuter and Gansky are smiling behind their blackout screens. Next up is item 12, the bylaws, and that is fee bylaw number 497, 2016. The staff recommendation is that fees bylaw number 497, 2016, amendment bylaw number 602, 2021. Thank you very much. Be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. I will put forward that motion.
Just a second. Sorry, just before you do,
I will pause on that motion.
there was one item that we missed, and so I've just handed it to you, and that is with respect to deleting the reference to plumbing fee on page 271 of the agenda. It says plumbing fee $100 plus $25 for each fixture. We don't do plumbing inspections anymore. So that's reflected in the consolidated and as well on the, more importantly, on the amending bylaw under item 2, I think it is.
2B2.
Yeah. So that would be, so basically the way the resolution should read is that fees bylaw number 497, 2016, amendment bylaw number 602, 2021, as amended, be introduced and read for second and third time.
Exactly as I said. Thank you very much. So that is on the floor now. And again, the CEO has given me the paper pieces of this, and basically it's just a strike on the grid and a strike in the amendment bylaw for the planning piece. Can I have a seconder for this, please? Thank you. Seventh inning stretch, Councillor Van. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions for the CEO or the municipal coordinator? Going on, call the motion. All those in favor of the motion as modestly amended, please confirm by saying yes or raising a hand. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. There it is. And this is procedures bylaw number 476 and the recommendation and the report that goes with it. Recommendation is that Council Procedures Bylaw number 476, 2015, amendment bylaw number 607, 2021 be adopted. And I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. This is the electronic meeting piece. I think CEO's report's pretty straightforward. Any questions for him?
Yeah, I did, in the draft amending bylaw, I added the changes that were made with respect to the end of the amending bylaw regarding sections 50 and 51 being deleted, renumbering the following after that. So that's all there.
Okay. Councilor Bain?
Well, I just feel like I had to say something after reading 300 and some odd pages of legalese and good ideas and everything. So I say to the CAO, thanks for doing this. It was a hard read, but I imagine it was harder to write. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I can smell that $20 in my hand if I move quickly here. I will call a motion on this bylaw. Please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
No, thank you very much. I'm getting used to this numberless page thing. Next one up is the last bylaw, and that's the Board of Variance bylaw number 502. And the report on the recommendation is that Board of Variance bylaw number 502, slow down. That Board of Variance bylaw number 502, 2017, amendment bylaw number 608, 2021 be adopted. And I will put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. And this is like a summary for the last one about electronic convenience for the board. Any questions for the CAO?
One comment, and likewise, just to Councillor Bain said, just to prove that I actually read all 374 pages. On page 336, section 9.4, it says where a special council meeting. I think that was a copy and paste, and it should be Board of Variance meeting, correct?
Can I pause, Councillor Abbott, just because you don't have a number page. Do you know whereabouts is it?
Yeah, I got it.
You got it?
Shoot. That's a good catch, Councillor Abbott. Unfortunately, it means we're going to have to rescind third reading and reread a third time. We can't adopt tonight.
Apologize, that's one I should have sent to you, but I was just scanning my notes and I see I'd highlighted it and didn't put a note next to it.
No.
No, it's my fault.
Okay, good catch is what we're all about here. Okay, so we're at second friendly amendment for the second reading only.
So it's the motion should be to rescind third reading and to amend section 9.4 to read where a Board of Variance meeting instead of special council meeting, and then to reread the bylaw as amended a third time.
As amended, thank you. Carla, is that done? Good. Any other questions?
Not from
Thank
me.
you very much. Thanks very much for the catch. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
Yes.
No, thank you. Very good. Councillor Abbott, I don't know what page it is, but I see the correspondence and my money's in your hands here.
How much is it worth?
I'm getting 20 from Peter, it's like 100 from you. So I'll split it with you.
Okay, so general correspondence. The first one, climate change heroes, just received that.
I did suggest we go default, and you want to pull it out.
I do unfortunately have a comment on a couple of them, otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Second one, we received that. On the third one, and there's two here from about parking from non-residents. The first one has some good from Mr. Weeb, has some good suggestions, some of which I think we've actually already done. The second one from Mr. Schwab, maybe a little more direct, and that's item number 5, I guess. Can we make sure that both of those go into the parking assessment that we are planning sometime in the near future, Peter, the review of the parking for the season?
Okay, thank you.
The next one on accessible parking is a grant thing. We have no use for that, so I don't believe. And then the one from North Bain Shore wastewater treatment plant. I'm sure other municipalities are very interested and not happy about this, but we needn't really have been copied, I guess, because it doesn't impact us, but sure there's other municipalities that are very, very concerned. Next one, the human trafficking. I suggest people read there's some scary statistics, but I don't believe there's any action that we can take care of there. And then the final one, consumer fireworks. There's a lot of talk recently, news articles and others about consumer fireworks. Some news articles are a little confusing. They spoke about a metro ban on fireworks, but it's not true. I think the city has banned consumer fireworks.
It's City of Vancouver.
Yeah, and the news article called it metro, so that was a mistake. But I think I would like to hear what's happening in other municipalities other than the city. I have a feeling this is something we're going to need to address. And I personally, having had a friend in Lions Bay resident a few years ago lose their dog because someone let off fireworks, and it was outside of the normal celebratory time, and the dog ran down on the highway and got killed. So I think it's something we're going to have to deal with, and I think we should start, if you can, understanding what other municipalities are doing.
So just to the point of what we currently have in place, we don't allow consumer fireworks in the municipality other than for Halloween and New Year's Eve, and they have to get a permit, and the fire chief has to have an opportunity to come by and check out the situation to make sure it's safe. They're not permitted to be used by consumers, residents, at Canada Day, for example, or any other time of year. Those are the only two occasions when they're allowed. Other than that, they're effectively banned, except where fire department is in charge of fireworks for special events and so forth.
Can I one further request on that process? And we had fireworks up on this year at Halloween up in Corner of Mountain in Sunset, and they were spectacular, and I'm sure all the kids and everyone loved them. I'm not suggesting that there should be no fireworks at Halloween, but I think a notice to residents somehow, especially those that have pets, just in case they're not aware, if we are going to have consumer fireworks within the village, outside of the obvious ones at the beach park that we have every year.
Maybe this is something we can bring up at another time, but I get the flavor of it.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to the staff and fire chief about it and look at doing a notification implementation at the very least.
Thank you very much. Resident correspondence, Councillor?
The first one from Charlie Bradbury. This is not the first time this topic has come up. The previous answer was from staff that it's going to be addressed in a future boulevard bylaw. I think that's the way it seemed to go. I think the residents' concerns are very valid. She makes her points well. She has done so before. I can't answer this because I don't have the means or the knowledge of how to answer it or what the plan is. So I guess I'm looking for some guidance, and hopefully some guidance from the works yard or from other members of staff that has some action attached to it. That's all I can say for now. I assume everyone's read it and looked at the pictures.
This is pretty detailed correspondence, and you're right, Councillor Abbott, it's come up before. Probably, I hate to push it off to when the parking plan occurs, but I'm not sure what the CAO's or council's thought is, but this could certainly be done at that time with the suggestion of implementation, whatever other changes the CAO has. Would that resonate with you, Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, or some sort of a commentary or report from the workshop manager potentially to give us an insight from the staffing point of view of what's involved here.
Yeah, I'll work with Peter on it and take a look at the points in detail and see how we can address it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Jaffer, but I think in fair point, staff is working on a lot of volume right now, and letters that are in this council meeting are lost in 3 meetings or 2 months from now. I think really Councillor Abbott's point is correct, as is Charlie's commentary and the time she took for the pictures in the letter. I think if we could see that this is brought back as one of the items for the parking report, then we can tick off yes, no, and why not kind of thing.
I don't know that's really parking related though.
It's
It's pedestrian walking related and safety issues that respect, and not really much.
I'm happy to call it safe pedestrian walkways and put it as unfinished business and keep it there as a marker until we're concluded.
Sure.
Okay, you good with that, Councillor Abbott?
And I could also comment that there was a Bayview widening project that staff is working on earlier in the summer. Ran out of time to sort of finish that, but made some good headway. Still more to do there. That's one of the areas I think she pointed out.
Okay, so as it stands up, so it's in unfinished business, it'll be in future agendas, we'll see it. And Councillor Abbott's fine with that. Councillor Barmera?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise some awareness around these discussions having taken place in the past. And we've talked about traffic calming measures. We've talked about signage to raise awareness that the roadways are shared. We've talked about speed limits. And there's a number of things that we have to consider here. And some of it feeds back to a risk tolerance policy. We're looking at and spending a lot of effort on risks that are marginal at best and possibly avoiding risks that are front and center, like Charlie Bradbury is highlighting. Weigh this against the geohazard effort that we're putting in, and it comes back to the lack of a risk tolerance policy and sort of ranking things that are true exposures versus ranking things that are perceived exposures. So I do think we're missing a big piece of the puzzle here.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All right, so we've got a definitive action on this. If that concludes that, Councillor Abbott, I can tell you that on the next one, I phoned Mr. Kisser over the weekend that he wrote this, and I never did get an answer back, and his time has expired on stuff. So should he phone me back, I'll talk to him.
Yeah, and my intention was, well, that one and the following one, which was between Mr. Brewer and Mr. Skretsky, my intention was to be a little tardy on my reply and wait until slightly later in this week when I can give a definitive answer.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you for the correspondence section. And look at that clock, still some time left. New business, 2 items. One was the CAO's request for a committee of the whole meeting on November 23rd, so Metro can present their 2050 plan, which I know that they've been doing the rounds of the other municipalities, and clearly we're at the end of the year.
So just to clarify, it's not my request.
Sorry,
It's my conveyance of the inquiry as to whether council is amenable to having them come and present on Metro 2050. Apparently, we're the only ones so far that haven't. I did ask Mr. Galloway, the gist of the presentation. And he indicated that it really sort of focuses on their big 7 items in Metro 2050, which are urban centers, transit corridors, affordable housing, ensuring 50% of the region retains its natural environment, retaining 32% of tree canopies, policies with respect to the First Nation member municipalities, and social equity policies. So that's in a nutshell what their presentation is about. And I leave it to you guys to decide if you want to hear from them on it. The comment period for the board ends in November at the end of next week. So you'd have the opportunity to hear from them, and then if you had comments to submit to the board, they would have to be in by the end of the week. So a tight timeline on that, and you'd be submitting as a committee of the whole, I guess. I pointed that out to Mr. Galloway.
Okay, thank you very much, CEO. So colleagues, this is another meeting. To be candid, I'm very familiar with Metro 2050. For me, I don't need another meeting. Wonderful offer that it is for them to come virtually to us. But let's just go around the horn and see what the interest is. So I'm looking at my screen, going left to right. Councillor Cunliffe, would you like them here, and will you attend?
I'm okay.
Okay being?
Okay being that I don't believe a presentation is going to be,
Thank you very much.
useful. Everything's online.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bain?
I think I heard the presentation at the Committee of Committees, what's it called? The last one they had. It sounds like from what CIO was talking about that most of what they want to talk about in 2050 doesn't really apply to us. So I'm not too sure if they're getting value out of their time talking to us.
Thank you. Councillor Bromere?
I'm open to it, but I'm not sure if it's a priority.
Good, thank you. Councillor Abbott?
I think definitely to everyone else. I do think we should be responding to Metro by 26th of November on our comments on the 2050 plan. And potentially we should be identifying changes to our urban containment boundary. I think if we asked them if we could have a more tailored presentation to our needs than the overall presentation, that would be beneficial. But one way or other, I think we do owe Metro a response to it by the 26th. I'm not sure how else we would do that.
I will backpedal there and say that it would be nice to see a presentation from Metro tailored to Lions Bay, because the last couple just really didn't seem to hit the mark. So I agree with you on that point, Neville. And I guess a response is the polite thing and the proper thing to do.
I guess the thing is that this is strictly about their Metro 2050 regional growth strategy document, and it's a packaged presentation. Probably most of the things as pointed out don't apply to Lions Bay. They have already presented twice to Lions Bay focused materials. This would not be about that. If you want to have them come back at a future date to talk further about the ideas with respect to urban containment boundary and changing status and things like that, that would be a different conversation. That's not this conversation. I think if you don't need to hear from them on the Metro 2050, then I think that it's probably a pass.
Which is my view as well. I think I'd much rather do the work, have the work done that Councillor Abbott's doing, and have them come back and see where we fit in after that.
How do we? I do feel we should respond to them with something by the 26th of November. How do we go about that if we don't get together? I mean, are you suggesting that I draft a response and share it with everyone, or how else do you do that?
Politely decline?
Well, in my previous conversation with Heather McNeil, she did say to me, one of her comments were, well, I sure hope you're going to comment on our 2050 plan. She didn't say, because we took the effort to come see you. I added that in my own mind. So, I don't know.
I just resent the email that I sent to council September 16th that has a link on how you can provide feedback about Metro 2050. So there's a website where you could go and provide that feedback through a form, or you could email the project team directly.
So that would work if we all did it individually, but I understood part of the request was to do it as a council or as a community. Was I wrong about that, or did I misunderstand that?
Certainly, if any member municipality as a council has passed resolutions with respect to the comments that it wishes to put forward in response to the Metro 2050 document, they are at liberty to do so, and many have. Whether or not this council wishes to do so would be up to you. You could do so as the only way that you can do so as a group would be, I suppose, to convene. If you want to put it forward as a council resolution, you'd have to convene a special meeting, pass resolutions as to what your feedback is, and get it all back before the 26th. Whether you hear from them as a presentation of their RGS update or not. Otherwise, you could provide them with your feedback as a committee of the whole if you want to do it that way, or just, if you want to go ahead and do it, just convene a special meeting for the 23rd and do it that way. But you'll have to all individually review the materials and decide what it is you want to put forward, or somebody would have to put forward the material that you want to consider commenting on, or draft resolutions as to what those comments might be. So those are different things you can consider doing, I guess.
Sounds like I'm going down the path of doing some of that already. So I don't know. What do others think? Should I try and put something together and then we get together, or we do it as a committee of a whole and submit it that and say it's just as a committee of a whole?
Yeah, you could have a look at their online form, and then that could provide some direction on the questions they're asking, and then compile something on behalf of the council. There's about 4 questions there.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to make a decision on this when we haven't seen the questions or are not familiar with the questions. So, I don't mean to offend them or anything, but I unless I know the questions, I can't really get.
Well, in fairness to Metro, we've been aware of this and this deadline for a long time.
Yeah.
Do we need a special meeting in order to do this, or can we not just confer by email with each other?
Well, we can't take a resolution by email with each other, that much we know. But I guess we could reply without a resolution. That's what the suggestion is.
Yeah, its suggestion is just a reply to acknowledge the invitation and so forth, but I'm not sure if we need a resolution.
You did a resolution as a post matter. You could send it sooner. So tell them.
Well,
How can you do a resolution?
Well, I'm thinking,
The next meeting
the next meeting.
in December. Their comment period's closed November 26th.
Send the comments before.
so why don't,
The ratification of comments that have been sent ahead of time. I don't think they're really going to care that much about the resolution part, but Yeah, whatever. That's an option too, I guess.
Is it not appropriate to just have a little brainstorm by email and send them our feedback? Peter?
Well, you can't really send them something that's from council. It won't be a resolution, won't be, you can only act as a body by way of resolution or bylaw. So it would be essentially your individual comments. So if that's the case, you could just as easily make individual comments, having read through their materials. Or alternatively, you can invite them to come on the 23rd, listen to what they have to say, and then after they finish, spend an extra half hour or an hour or whatever it is you want to spend, come up with some comments that you want to endorse and have them, direct staff to send them off by the end of the week.
Or alternatively, we could confer by email with each other how we feel that we would like to respond and host a succinct special council meeting in order to pass the resolution to reply by the 26th.
Yep. Council should really do things in a public meeting and not by way of email. So it's really not acceptable practice to essentially do your job via email instead of in public.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
We should discuss it. We should discuss it in the public, but we could, someone needs to have something to discuss. So maybe I could put that together. If you want to send me their thoughts, I'll put something to discuss. We get together quickly and we discuss it. That's what Jamie's suggesting.
I think that's what I'm suggesting.
And we have the public discussion. Sounds like we're meeting on the 24th anyway.
23rd? Tuesday the 23rd? We've already got something on the 24th?
We could meet 15 minutes before that. Would that be adequate time, do you believe?
No,
Councillor Abbott?
no, we couldn't do anything in 15 minutes.
Half an hour?
It's have to be a separate meeting though, because it's a committee of the whole on the Wednesday. You're proposing a council meeting.
A special council meeting, we could do it for a half an hour before close it and go into the committee of the whole.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay, Councillor Abbott, if that's your victory, I'd take it. Okay. Why don't we, is that something you're recommending, Councillor Abbott? It's Councillor Cunliffe's suggestion, but you're the driver on this piece.
I'll second Councillor Cunliffe's suggestion. Yes, and I'll vote in favour.
Okay. So second, okay, so just to be clear, we're looking at a special meeting on the 24th, half an hour before the committee of the whole meeting, to conclude that piece of business. And then we'll close that meeting and go into the committee of the whole. Is that your understanding of that, Councillor Cunliffe?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Barmer, we'll call you the question period. Yes, good. Call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes.
Yes.
Good, carried. Next one is
Just a quick housekeeping question. Will both of those meetings be sent out by staff, the Zoom meetings? Has that been sent out yet, or is that still coming for the 24th?
I think the other one, we've got an invite and a.
Yeah, the committee of the whole is already on the calendar. Got it. All right, thank you.
Carla, could you send the invite out, please? Thank you. Okay, well, the next item is the timing of the strategy session. CIO, what are you thinking?
Well, I looked at last year's schedule and it was, we started at 4 o'clock on each day. That's obviously got to be subject to the availability of council on the Tuesday, November the 30th, and the Wednesday, December 1st. So I guess that's the question is, kind of went, I think, 4 o'clock till about 7:30 was the schedule that we had last year on both days.
Okay. Does that sit with everybody? Is that fine?
I have a couple work things that I need to sort out. I'm actually committed till 5 p.m., but I will sort something out and be there as soon, as close to 4 p.m. as I possibly can.
Thank you very much.
On the 30th, that is. The first I will clear.
Good, thank you. Is it fine with everybody else? Okay, guys, yes. Yep, good, done, Peter.
Okay.
Thank you very much, which brings us to the last thing with the public, and that's the public questions and comments. To those that are in the gallery, if anybody wants to sign, please come forward now.
Got one hand up.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, appreciate your time. I'll be quick because I know you guys have had a long evening. I just wanted to comment on the discussion regarding the beach redevelopment, specifically the paved area, the discussion around the noise that a basketball or other sporting activities might generate there. I'm a little miffed as to, you know, we're talking about a beach park. There's if you're ever going to have a place for kids to go and play basketball or street hockey or whatever other activities they might want to play, there's no better place than a beach park. And you're you know, on the one side you've got the railroad tracks plus a parking lot, you've got the beach or the marina parking lot and yard, you've got a downward slope to the beach in front. I can't imagine a better place to allow kids to go and play. And as a parent of 2 young kids in the village, I would just, and I've been coaching soccer Sunday here with the sapling group and the young preschool kids or elementary school kids. I would just strongly encourage you to really consider creating as much opportunity for sporting activities there, including putting 2 basketball hoops on a full court opportunity there. You know, create as much opportunity for kids to play, not less. And we're going through the process of paving that area anyway. Creating a beautiful beach area. It's great now for toddlers. There's not a lot to do there for the young teenagers and into the teenage years. So that's my comment. I appreciate your guys' time and have a great evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruce, for your time. Anybody else in the gallery wish to come forward? This would be the time. Otherwise, we'll say good evening. There being none, we will say good evening. Thank you very much to the members of the gallery, and we will stop this meeting and council will go into close in a couple of minutes. So we'll say goodbye. All right. Thank you. Hello, everybody. We're back. Council has closed the in-camera meeting, and time now is 11:03. And we are back in chambers for the public portion, and council is reporting out the following. And this is regarding the 51 Brunswick encroachment agreement. Council reviewed the legal status of the encroachment agreements pertaining to the stairs and carport at 51 Brunswick Beach Road and acknowledges that the rights and obligations contained in the agreements council made with the former property owner are validly held by the current property owner. Accordingly, council have instructed staff to rectify the documentation in a land titles office to reflect these rights and obligations. And that is all council will be reporting out. It is now time to adjourn the meeting. I'll put forward that motion. Thank you for the second. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please confirm by saying yes or raising your hand. Thank you.
Yes.
Meeting is closed. Good night, everybody.
So,
Good night.
Thank you all. Good evening.
Are you watching?